Well, I've talked a lot. Hi everyone, how you doing? Hope you're doing well, all things considered. We're all screwed. Anyway, welcome to another episode of Chud Watch, where we're gonna be doing stuff. We got Elliot Hulse. We got Sargon talking about J.K. Rowling, and I assume he's gonna act obtuse, just like Jeremy did, and be like, why is this transphobic? You know why, Sargon. Tate says he's buying another car, even though he claims he bought $1 million car, $500,000 car the other day. I guess he's buying another one, so we'll watch that. We got the guy who all his sentences are like questions, and he's gonna be like, how do we save the West? We have this femboy trying to explain why they think trap isn't a slur, even though it is. Overlord DVD, I don't know, talking about how they think Universal's going woke. We got Jeremy, who says YouTube is screwing him over. I hope it is. I really, really do. We'll watch that video. And then we have Tim Pool, who's going to be incredibly hypocritical about McConnell and Trump talking about, of course, being hypocrites and replacing Ruth Bader Ginsburg's position on the Supreme Court, despite the fact that in 2016 they refused to do the same, even though because it was an election year. But now that it's less than 2 months before the election, it's fine because they're Republicans and they think that they can just do whatever they want. And they can, because no one will stop them. I'm having a real bad time, chat. I don't know if you can tell. SCompu couldn't be here Monday. Can we watch my video today? You said Monday, but it never happened. Oh, God. We can watch part of it. I doubt we're spending the whole 25 minutes of the video, though. Cherry Tree Boy, to be honest, Femboy also makes me so uncomfortable that I don't know why it's accepted. Hey, they identify as such, and I'm not gonna tell them not to. That's their business. I don't care. At least it's Talk Like a Pirate Day. I don't care. I don't care. I'm in a bad mood. Sorry, chat. Let's watch some stuff, and hopefully I'll get in a better mood somewhere through the stream. I doubt it, though. Someone tried poisoning Trump. What, did they try and spike his fifth bucket of fried chicken for the day? I don't think he could poison Trump anymore with all the garbage he puts in his body. So I don't know. Anyway, I don't know. What are we gonna watch? Let's do Jeremy. I think he's gonna be upset in this video. And it might make me feel better to see Jeremy in distress. So let's see what this is about.
The copyright system on YouTube is complete and utter garbage. I woke up this morning to a copyright notification.
Dr. Gamble, thank you for gifting 3 tier 1 subs. I appreciate that.
And a copyright strike. If you are unaware...
Oof, he got a copyright strike. See, the thing is, especially lately on YouTube, while people still get copyright notifications and they get videos demonetized or monetized for the person who's claiming it, like, copyright strikes aren't as common as they used to be back in the day. Nowadays, often copyright holders, if you use a clip or something, even if it's fair use, which they shouldn't do, but nonetheless it's better than getting a strike, they'll just monetize the video for themselves or not allow you to monetize it. Specifically because there have been so many legal actions taken in cases of false DMCAs, so they don't DMCA, they just go to YouTube and they're like, hey, take this down. And they do so without a strike. Apparently Jeremy really effed up, though, if he's getting a strike, so let's see what this is all about.
How damaging strikes are to a channel, let me inform you. Once you receive 3 of them, your channel will be terminated. Having any amount of strikes on your channel at any time is a constant stress and a constant reminder that your channel is at risk. The YouTube copyright system is so easily abused that people can pretty much take down videos anytime they want, anywhere they want. And the only way you as a creator are allowed to fight back against that is give some anonymous person on the internet your full legal information, including address and phone number. Awesome.
Well, that's so if they decide to move forward with a lawsuit, they can sue you. That's the entire point, Jeremy. Like, you can talk about how you disagree with the DMCA system, but YouTube's complying to the law there. That's just how it works. Basically, the legal information stuff is specifically because once you file a counterclaim, they can then I think they can rebut it one more time just through YouTube's system, but after that, you can rebut that. And unless they counter with an actual lawsuit in like 30 days, then the claim gets automatically released, which is how it works. So they need that information in case things move forward into the legal area. This is something that's like scary and unfortunate. As someone who's been part of a lawsuit involving fair use, I completely understand the financial and emotional drain these things can take. But nonetheless, Jeremy, we are in the business of making content for the public, and this is the risk that you take when you do so. You're putting yourself out there as an individual who is working basically as an independent media organization, and as such, you're opening yourself up to liability. It sucks, I agree, I wish the law was different, it should be changed, but nonetheless, it is what it is, and that's not YouTube's fault. That's the fault of, like, the laws of the country. Salale, thank you for following.
Some system you have, YouTube. So I woke up this morning, a video was taken down about Pokimane. So immediately I assumed it was some Pokimane simp. I was like, well, I open the video and I say, well, what the hell? What's this? Why is it taken down? So you see the video here. It says, video unavailable. This video is no longer available due to a copyright claim by Superrider. I didn't know who
Fickadizzy, thank you for subscribing. 4-month streak.
Who that was. I thought it was a YouTuber. I thought it was a troll. Turns out it's an artist. So I'm like, okay, well, I'm looking around. I go through my video, a 13-minute video, looking to see if I used anything that, you know, I shouldn't have or whatever. I didn't recognize anything that I didn't see floating around everywhere. Well, it turns out in the little 20-second intro that my editor made me, there's this image, which is a Gundam and
all right, well, Jeremy, that's on you, bud. That's not... If you just have, like, an intro that's playing a bunch of stuff... Again, I don't know the context, and I can't go watch the video because it's been removed. But, like, if you're using other people's copyrighted images without doing some sort of fair use commentary or review of them, then yeah, it's gonna get taken down. Like, that's always the case. That's why typically when you search Google for stuff, you want to search for images that are like non-copyrighted or public domain, specifically so this kind of thing doesn't happen, Jeremy. Out of all the things to be mad about, this is not the one. See, when you said this, I thought you were gonna say like Pokimane or whatever her name is came and struck your video, which wouldn't be fair, because I do think what Jeremy does when he comments on other people's videos is fair use, similar to what I'm doing. We're basically commenting and talking about the content and not just repurposing it for, like, wholesale resale, if that makes sense. It's transformative, I think, is the verbiage that's typically used under fair use. But, like, Jeremy, if you're gonna just yank someone's art from the internet without, like, commenting on it, then yeah, that's not fair use. That's breaking copyright law.
Pokimane drawn by, I assume, this person, Superrider. Okay? It's not like his watermark's cut out or anything. You see it right in. So this is the only image I can see in the video. And
the Flower Girl 13, thank you for saying I look nice. I appreciate that.
then I see this super thing down here. So I'm like, oh, okay, it's this person. And
again, it depends on the context. Considering it's actually a Pokimane thing, if the video is about that, and he's using it in a montage where he's trying to say that he thinks that certain people who do fan art are simps of her or something, which again, I can't believe we're even having this discussion. It's such a petty thing. But, like, I would say that potentially falls under fair use because he's using that to illustrate a larger point. But Jeremy, again, if that's how you feel, then file a counterclaim. That's fine. You do that. That's part of being a YouTuber. You've been here for years. You should know this. And I guess maybe Jeremy's only been here for 3 or 4 years. So maybe because I've been here longer, I'm used to it being even stricter. I mean, people complain about YouTube's copyright, like, policies, and rightfully so, because YouTube doesn't communicate whatsoever with content creators, and I understand that. But nonetheless, in the last 3 years or so, copyright's actually gotten a lot better on YouTube in terms of fair use. I'm serious, and I know you're going to be like, what? But that's because people don't talk about it that much. Because people talk about things when they get bad, but when they slowly start to get better, they don't tend to comment on it because they're just happy that the thing has happened. And plus, positive videos don't get as many clicks as negative videos. But, like, Jeremy, if you genuinely believe that in the context of your video this was fair use, and it may be, I haven't seen the video, nor am I a lawyer, if you believe it is, then file a counterclaim. That's the entire purpose of counterclaims, and I very much doubt this person who drew fan art is going to sue you. So if you go into a counterclaim, and they say, like, no, and then you do one more, and wait 30 days, then the video will be back up, because there's no way they're going to sue you. Claire the Egg with 20 bits. I love the lipstick. Thank you.
Their image appears in my video. They took that and not only took my entire video down, but gave me a channel strike, which now puts my channel at risk. And you know what?
That was definitely malicious, by the way. Because, like, even big companies, like, if I, like, for instance, I feel safe on YouTube at this point. Oh, thank you, Highly and Dirt, for 40 bits. Appreciate that. For instance, like, when I did the PlayStation 4 reveal, I didn't feel concerned about using PlayStation's video because I understand that based on how copyright systems on YouTube work now, because companies recognize at this point that if you're looking at their stuff under fair use, then it's probably beneficial to them, but they might take the monetization. So when I did the PS4 reveal the other day, I did it under the understanding that I probably wouldn't get monetized on YouTube for it, but it would stay up. And it has. That's basically what happened. Like, even a big company like Sony doesn't copyright strike you at this point most of the time because they're aware of the legal peril it puts you in. Did I say PS4? I meant PS5, yeah. So, whoever this person was who took down Jeremy's video and gave him a strike, oh yeah, that was probably malicious.
Chat, Hannah and I match.
We do.
I don't even blame this kid because only because the YouTube system is so broken and such BS is this even allowed to happen. First of all,
Jeremy, and I understand that it seems like BS. I totally get that. But the system is set up in such a way to reduce liability for YouTube. This is the entire purpose of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, is so platform holders do not themselves become liable for content that infringes upon copyright on their platform. It basically lets anyone who's a copyright holder, and anyone could be a copyright holder, up to and including people who make fan art. If you create a thing, you basically have the copyright on it automatically. There used to be more hoops you had to go through, but nowadays I think it's pretty much the standard that, like, if you create a work that's unique, then it is copyrighted and you own the copyright for that. So anyone who claims that they own the copyright to something, and I do agree that vetting for people being able to get into the system and say, I have copyright on this, should maybe be a little more stringent, but YouTube doesn't want to spend the money to do it. But again, that's a general YouTube issue all around. They don't have a lot of people working on the site, despite the fact that it's one of the largest websites on the planet. Anyway, so Jeremy, the system in which disputes basically have to be settled between you, the individual who put up the video, and the person who is making a claim against you, that's not YouTube's fault. That's literally the Digital Millennium Copyright Act. It's what it does. It takes the video platform out of the legal equation, because if that were the case, then no one would ever host a video platform, because they would be sued constantly. So that's what the Digital Millennium Copyright Act was made for, so that in the millennium, the new digital age, people who provide platforms would feel free to do so without the risk of constant legal battles over people uploading, I don't know, episodes of The Office to YouTube or whatever.
Kid never emailed me. I'm assuming it's a kid because you're talking about taking down a video from somebody who will knowingly spend thousands of dollars on a lawsuit knowing he's going to lose it to try and defend what he believes is right. Now, I'm sure I'm sure after this video, I'm going to resolve things with Super Rider. There's no way this person is going to take this video.
Shorts02, thanks for subscribing. Love the matching outfits, thanks.
Take this image to court. He or they are going to lose thousands of dollars unless they're completely moronic. I don't believe that that's the case. But here's what happens when you get a YouTube strike. Okay, when they submit a strike to you, this is the amount of information I have to provide a total stranger on the internet. Okay, so I get this copyright strike. Pokimane blasted for clout chasing. An image that appears in 4 seconds of a 12 or 11-minute video. Okay, 4 seconds of a video.
It doesn't really matter though, Jeremy, until such a time. And honestly, interestingly, when I do videos and it includes like video content or audio content that gets copyrighted by someone, at this point, YouTube does allow you the option, typically, I guess it might be different under a strike, but like if I play a video like a Karen compilation, and this has happened before, where I'm doing a stream and there's someone who has a radio in the background of a video and it's playing a song, and that gets picked up by the automatic systems of YouTube, and then it's like, hey, you can't monetize this video. It now gives you the option to remove the audio from that section, which is nice. So it would be nice if they did the same for video and were able to remove a strike if it's something like this in the context of a larger video. But again, I haven't gotten a copyright strike in a very long time, so I'm not exactly sure what the process for that is.
Now, after I clicked, so I can either contact the claimant, which I've done, or I can submit a counter notification. In order to submit a counter notification, let me show you all the information I have to provide a complete stranger on the internet.
Yes, this is for legal purposes, Jeremy.
Right? In order to fight this, YouTube...
Because you're filing a legal document, Jeremy. Do you understand that? This isn't YouTube's, like, these are the things YouTube has decided you need to put in. This is under the DMCA, which is the law. If you are going to file a counter notification, which is, by the way, you're saying under penalty of perjury that, hey, I have the right to use this material. It's a legal document. It's not just a form YouTube put up. It's literally stuff that is required under the law if you are going to make a counterclaim. YouTube didn't arbitrarily decide you need to put like your address and your name and your phone number and all that stuff. Those are all things that are required under the law so that if they decide to move on you legally, they can serve you a lawsuit. That's why. YouTube didn't decide that. Congress did.
Forces me to give this person my full legal name, my home address, my phone number, my city, my personal email, state, zip, and country. So I have to give a complete stranger all my personal information just to fight for what's right. Now,
yep, it's a legal document, Jeremy. Oh no, I'm a business owner and there's a legal thing happening to me. I have to use the law to fight back? Me no likey. Yeah, it sucks, Jeremy. I know. I've been in a lawsuit about this before. It sucks so much. And we ended up spending like $80,000 just to settle. Like, it's ridiculous. And the legal system in this country, and the DMCA in particular, is pretty one-sided and it's not very fair, but nonetheless, it is what it is, and you can't really bitch at YouTube for following the law, Jeremy. What you should be doing is saying, I don't like this position. Call your Congress people so we can make a difference, you know? Whatever. Lonesome Troll, 10 bits. The quartering seems stuck in 2015 with his politics and arguments. Yeah.
Had Super Rider emailed me or tweeted me to ask me to remove the image, I would have been 100% fine with it. If Super Rider doesn't like me and they don't want me using their image, I don't care about that. That's totally fine. I don't deny that it appears that Super Rider did draw this image. My question is it copyrighted? I bet you it's not.
Jeremy, people have the copyright to their creations. All they have to do is show the court, hey, I made this. This is mine. And that's proof you have a copyright. it's been quite a while, I think, legally, since you've had to literally go to like, or send to like an office of copyright, like, hey, I want copyright on this image, right? Like, if I write a book and someone publishes an identical book, I'm pretty sure you just need to like legally show that you wrote it first, and then the copyright defaults to you.
Are they willing to go to court and lose? Both of us will probably lose $10,000 to $15,000 fighting this out in the court.
That's lowballing it if you honestly keep going. Like I said, Jake and I, when we did that lawsuit, spent tens and tens of thousands of dollars. It was absurd.
They'll probably lose, but we'll both lose a ton of money. All right. Is that what they want? Or did they just want me to remove the image? Well, YouTube sets it up so that they're allowed to take down my entire video for 4 freaking seconds.
Again, Jeremy, if it was copyright infringement, then yeah, they have the right to do that. If you think it wasn't, then file the DMCA counterclaim, which is a legal document that requires you to put your information in. But here's the thing, Jeremy. If you file a DMCA counterclaim with all that information, and they decide to counterclaim again, then you can also get their information. Like, that's the point. It's legal. Like, you have to put in this information, and their information would also become public to you at some point, so you could also sue them. That's the entire purpose of filling out these forms. Because it's a legal process. You are filling out legal documents under the penalty of perjury. That's why it says that. I don't know if you know this, Jeremy, but YouTube doesn't have the right to charge you with perjury. The government does. Which is why it says, like, signed under penalty of perjury.
Of an image that I didn't even... Well, look, it's my editor, so ultimately it's my responsibility. But it's not like I sold it and I cut his watermark out. It's not like I'm selling t-shirts with his image.
I understand that, Jeremy, and based on the way you describe it, if it was a montage at the beginning of the video and you were trying to illustrate a point, especially if you commented on said montage, I would definitely say it falls under fair use. If you didn't, then it's going to be up to a judge to decide, like, is showing these images in a series in and of itself commentary on said images. I would argue it probably is, but nonetheless, I don't think that's like a settled legal question, right? Like, you're recontextualizing the image in the context of a montage of a bunch of other images that show similar things. Would it fall under fair use? Probably. But again, fair use is something that's not been litigated a ton. Leonard French has videos on this. It does get litigated. But like a lot of the time, it winds up being settled because usually it involves a small content creator and a big company. And when the small content creator ends up getting the funds, whether through crowdfunding or they have the money themselves, in order to fight that claim, often the company will settle so they don't set precedent. So it's a whole complicated thing.
And I keep saying his. I don't know. They. And it's not like this person isn't clearly in the community. They are clearly a fan of It's a Gundam. So why would they do this other than to be to take advantage of a system that's in place that now puts creators' livelihoods at risk?
They may have, even if it wasn't malicious, they may have legitimately just felt that you took their image without the right to do so. And again, that's probably a gray area. It's probably something that would need to go to court in order to be accurately, like, decided if it's fair use or not. But nonetheless, they felt that way, Jeremy. That's the entire purpose of the DMCA system, is that if you're a copyright holder and you feel your copyright has been infringed upon, then you have the right to take down infringing material. Like, again, I get that it's frustrating, but being an adult who runs a business and is involved in the legal world of, like, this kind of thing, especially when you're using other people's content under fair use, this is a risk you have. This is a risk I have. This is a risk everyone who does this for a living has, is contending with lawsuits. Because unfortunately, in the real world, when you're running a business that discusses other people, a business that, under fair use, ideally, you're using people's content to discuss it, yeah, litigation is just a part of it. It sucks. I agree, Jeremy. I agree. Being an adult sucks. But here we are. Like, we don't really have a choice.
When you submit a copyright
Nord Guy, thanks for subscribing. 3-month streak.
strike like this, you have no idea how many strikes that person has, what it's going to do to their livelihood, and why. Because YouTube sets up a system that makes it so easily abused. Why not? Why not? Here's a very simple change that Team YouTube could do. If an image appears in 4 seconds, by the way, I'm sure they didn't have to approve that they even owned this image. They're allowed to just submit this anyway.
Right, because if YouTube gets involved and starts deciding, I think this is or is not fair use themselves, then they open themselves up to liability. And you might be like, oh, they should do that. They're like, sure, that's fine. That's your argument. But I'm telling you why they're not doing that. If they all of a sudden start becoming the arbiter of what isn't fair use or what isn't copyright infringement, they are intrinsically involving themselves in the process and they are opening themselves up to litigation, which is why they just don't. They just go, you two settle this yourselves. We're not dealing with it. Thank you. Catalina Gearbox with 5 bits. You look so cute today, Hannah. Thank you. MST3K fan 77 for following. Didn't you follow in the past? I thought you were already following.
All right. The system is set up so that you can just submit some bogus crap like this, whether you own it or not, and take down an entire...
I mean, the guy does own it. The guy does own it. The image itself. Again, the question of, is it fair use to use it in a montage at the beginning of your video? That's an interesting one. You should probably talk to a lawyer about that if you're gonna, like, litigate it. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know anything about it. But to me, it seems like that's not a cut and dry question. It's certainly something that they could probably have a case over, even if they lose said case.
I feel like I just need to keep popping in periodically to show chat that Hannah and I are matching today.
Your video before I can even respond to it. All right. Second of all, why wouldn't YouTube just black out that part of the video? They have to say...
I don't necessarily disagree with that. I think that would be a good compromise. They already do that for audio, like I discussed earlier. Like if I have something that's blocked for copyright purposes and it's like an audio segment, then I can trim that segment out or mute that segment.
There's nothing funny about the
it would be
tools of
cool if
capitalism.
YouTube did change it so you could just like edit after it's already uploaded that segment out. But Jeremy, you could also like upload that video and just cut that segment out, right? You could re-put up that video without the image in if you think that that's the issue. Like, regardless of whether or not you can rectify by removing an image from a video, if it was copyright infringement, removing that segment from it wouldn't undo the thing you already did. Like, imagine if I go and rob a jewelry store, and this is an extreme example, but let me to illustrate why this doesn't work. Imagine if I go and rob a jewelry store at gunpoint, and as I'm walking out the door, the cops get there and they stand there, and I go, "You caught me," and I go and I settle the jewels back. And I go, am I free to go? That's not how it works, Jeremy. If you did infringe on someone's copyright and published a video, even if you were to remove that segment from the video, which you can still do even if you get a strike, you would just need to do it on your own computer. Re-edit it, edit out that segment, re-upload the video. But, like, it doesn't undo the fact that you potentially broke copyright law. And again, I'm not saying he did. I haven't seen the video. I don't know the context. I'm not a lawyer. But what I am saying is, it probably is a gray area legally because of the... how do I put this? There have only been so many lawsuits involving the DMCA and fair use. H3H3, the one Jake and I did years ago. There have been some other ones, but like Sargon, I think, was involved in one. But the point is this, like, the system is in line with the law. If you disagree with what's going on, then you need to deal this in a legal avenue. And I know that sucks. I know it sucks. I know that more than just about anyone, being someone who was involved in a lawsuit like this. But just because something sucks doesn't mean it's not reality, right? You can't bitch and moan your way out of a lawsuit. You can't bitch and moan your way out of copyright infringement or the question of whether or not something is copyright infringement or fair use. Like, you're an adult, you put out content, this is your job, you gotta contend with this stuff. Let me see what, it sounded like something happened. Keirthin with 100 bits, love that you guys are matching lesbian goals, thanks.
Where this part appears, if they're telling the truth, like Super Rider did, it's a 3-second clip in a 5-minute or a 12-minute video. Why not just chop that scene out? There are already tools in the back end that the system can automatically cut sections from your video.
Sure, and I would agree, but it wouldn't undo your strike. Like I said with the jewel thief analogy, undoing and removing something that was potentially illegal, I'm not saying it is, but I'm saying potentially, doesn't undo the fact that you did it. And YouTube isn't gonna start, like, closing the barn door after the cows already got out, you know what I mean? Like, they're still gonna give you a strike because you still did a thing. It's not a preventative measure if every time you were to break copyright, you could just rescind it and say, oops, I'm sorry. And again, I'm not saying Jeremy did this. I don't think he was being malicious. I don't think he or his editor legitimately thought, ha ha ha, we will steal this person's copyrighted material for our little montage. No, I think they were just trying to put a montage together that they probably thought was funny. And they just pulled some pulled some images from the internet to do so. Nonetheless, if it's copyright infringement, it is. If it's not, it's not. But if someone believes that their copyrighted material is being used in a way that is not legal, then they have the right to file DMCA claims. You might not agree with it, the courts might not even agree with it, but they do have the right to do so, and you have the right to combat that. I get it. A lot of things in life suck. Like, you know what else sucks, Jeremy? Man, mortgage payments. Man, you know what else sucks? Car payments and having to pay for gas.
There's nothing funny
like,
about the
these
tools
are all
that
things that you just have to deal with. Like, life isn't always happy and fun and always full of things that you like. MMO addicted with 10 bits. Whenever I hear anyone say the system, this is what my mind jumps to. I'm guessing that's the Lonely Islands song about this. Oh, no, it's not.
The system is mine!
I've not played the Metal Gear games, so I don't get the context, but that's funny.
What kind of precedent is this going to set if I don't go to court now? Everybody who scrolls.
If you're talking about legal precedent, it doesn't set any legal precedent, but I don't think that's what he means. I think he just means colloquially.
As an image on Twitter, are they going to get copyright strikes from people? Everybody who reads an article on their stream and there's images in that stream, is that going to be the legal precedent that we want?
Probably not, because again, those things usually fall under fair use, and usually tweets aren't even considered something that because you don't monetize your tweets typically, whereas YouTube videos you often do. Again, I'm not a lawyer, it's a complicated matter, and I do think that what Jeremy was doing probably fell under fair use. But again, that's a legal question, which is why DMCA is a legal system.
When people are live streaming, reading an article, if an image appears on that article, the person who drew that image gets to copyright strike the stream. This is absolute.
There have been cases involving that. For instance, there was like a video that was a popular viral video, and in the background someone was listening to a radio and there was a song on the radio and it got copyright struck for the song, even though the song was not the focus of the video in any way, shape, or form, and it was incidental to the content. And the court found in favor of the, oh boy, was it the plaintiff? I don't remember who initiated the lawsuit. But whoever uploaded the video won, and the court basically found, like, this video is not about the song that happens to be in the background. You cannot strike this just because incidentally your music happens to be here. That doesn't mean it doesn't happen on YouTube, because their system is automatic, and if it picks up on a song, it'll pick up on a song regardless, but you can file counterclaims. But anyway, my point is, this has been ruled on by the courts, and basically if something is incidental like that, so let's say you are reading an article and commenting on it in a fair use fashion, like I do sometimes, or like Jake does, or anyone who's a commentator on like Twitch or YouTube or whatever, that's fine. You're allowed to do that, and if there's a copyrighted image in that article that you're scrolling through, that's incidental to the content of the video, so it's fine.
Absurdity. And I'm really trying to say, like, I don't want people to dogpile Super Rider, okay? It's the system that's the problem. I assume after this video comes out, Super Rider will contact me if they're smart. If they're not smart and they want to go to court and lose a ton of money, believe me, I'm willing to. Because I will not let this precedent be set where people can take down an entire video just 'cause.
I mean, whether or not you sue this guy, it's not going to change YouTube's system, unfortunately. YouTube's doing what they're doing because it's the way in which they have the least liability. And as a company, they're always going to do that.
Now I have to dox myself to even fight this. Absolute bullshit. All right? YouTube.
It's a legal document. I wouldn't consider that doxing. Again, you're in the middle of a legal dispute, Jeremy. That's not doxing.
This system has been broken.
If the guy then took that information that he gets from that legal document and spreads it online, then you would have legal recourse, most likely.
Broken for years. I know you want to keep your hands off, right? Your little hands off everything. But is this what you want in your community now? So
is Jeremy trying to, like, pull at YouTube's heartstrings and somehow appeal to some moral center? Jeremy, they're a corporation. What are you doing, bud? Don't waste your breath. Yes, I'm sure YouTube or Google, who owns YouTube, Alphabet, I think they're called Alphabet now. I'm sure they're going to be like, well, this will open us up to millions and millions of dollars in lawsuits. But the quartering guy, boy, he got me right here. Daughter of Tiamat with 40 bits. Why does he keep saying the name like he's trying to say the N-word with a soft A? I have no idea what you're talking about.
So you're going to set a precedent.
Like the name of the guy, Flo Rida, or whatever the guy's name was?
Where anybody who doesn't like somebody can just submit a bunch of copyright strikes when they're browsing the internet. I mean, is that what we're going to do? Is that how we're going to enable channels to be put at risk? And I don't, in this particular case, I'm not calling Super Rider a troll. I believe this was a mistake, and maybe
because that's how it's spelled. The person who was asking that question earlier.
Going to come back and say, well, I didn't know it was going to take your video down. I just wanted your money. I don't know. All right. But clearly, this image in my video is definitely going to be fair use. It's not like I'm selling merch. It's not like I uploaded a video of just his image. It's a single.
I would definitely say for sure. And again, I'm not a lawyer. Don't take anything I say as legal advice ever. If someone asked me, is Jeremy's use of the image which he showed earlier in the video in this video fair use? 100%. I think it's fair use. As a complete layman, fair use. Because he's talking about it, and he's talking about the fact that it caused him to get a strike.
Image in a 12-minute video or 11-minute video.
Although, I'm not gonna lie, just on a personal, like, vindictive level, it would be funny if the Super Rider guy struck this video, too.
That
it wouldn't be legal, I don't think. It would probably be a bad move, because Jeremy has the resources to sue him. But it would make me laugh, and I think that's worth it. So consider that, Super Rider. Maybe do this and kind of destroy your own life, just for my own bemusement.
Adds
amusement. Sorry.
Flavor to the statement I'm making. I don't need to argue fair use. The judge will decide that. But the system that YouTube has set up now puts my channel at risk. It now sets a precedent where other people who maybe...
They could already do this, Jeremy. What are you talking about? If there wasn't already precedent, then the guy couldn't have done it in the first place. This is always the case on YouTube. It's just that it's an honor system that, believe it or not, people don't usually maliciously try and take down videos they don't have the right to do so. Because it's a legal thing, and it would open them up to really, really, really terrible lawsuits. Cascadia93 with a bit. These Chuds often forget that anyone who owns anything can claim if the image is in a thing they find objectionable. Ask the guy who made Pepe. He sued the alt-right and won because he was a leftist. Yeah.
Don't like me, we'll go through and find images and then spam the creator of that image and say, oh, you should copyright strike this guy. We can take his channel down. It only takes 3. Is that the system? Is that what we're going to do here?
Jeremy, and again, yeah, it's like he thinks this is the first time this has ever happened. Jeremy, this is how the system has been for years. For years and years. How did you not know this? You work on the platform.
YouTube, you're going to allow creators to have their entire channel put at risk because somebody doesn't like them? Because let's be clear, the only reason you really submit this strike is if you don't like me.
Not necessarily. It's entirely possible Super Rida doesn't like Jeremy for a multitude of reasons. A lot of people don't like Jeremy, myself included. But, like, let's say Jeremy did something that I thought was legit copyright infringement. Like, let's say he took a whole video of mine and just uploaded it on his channel with absolutely no commentary, which wouldn't be fair use. I'd probably strike that video, because it would be copyright infringement. But of course, that's not the case. That's not what's happening. It's obviously more of a legal gray area. But I don't know. Jeremy, I don't know how to tell you this, but yes, the way people treat you is very determinant upon how they view you as a person. Like, if this person thought it was copyright infringement, but they just thought you were an okay person, then yeah, maybe they would have been like, hey, no strike, though. Like, hey, I don't think this should be up, but I'm not going to give you a strike. However, if people see you as a bad dude and they have legal powers to harm you in some way, yeah, they're probably going to do it. Like, is this news to you, Jeremy? Do you not understand that people treat people in such a way relative to their reputation? That's again, a reality of being an adult. If people don't like someone, they're gonna treat them worse. Why? Do you not know this? Anyway.
Because you know dang well this is fair use. And you know dang well it's not like I did it nefariously. It's not like I'm selling my own brand of t-shirt with your images. You also know dang well it's not like I'm not friends with It's a Gundam who's in the image. We clearly agree on the Pokemon It's a Gundam.
Okay. So the dude is okay, so he probably doesn't even not like Jeremy because It's a Gundam like fan image. So the guy might have just legit thought, or gal, I guess. I don't know the gender of the person. Whoever they are, since they're a fan of It's a Gundam, who is very similar to Jeremy, if you don't know who It's a Gundam is. It's another, like, reactionary Chud media channel that gets mad about Brie Larson and Star Wars and stuff. Then they might even like you, Jeremy, but they thought that what you did was copyright infringement. I'm not saying it was. I have to preface every time. I'm not saying it was. But if they thought that, then they probably just struck you for that reason. I doubt they dislike you, Jeremy, if they're a fan of It's a Gundam. You're putting motivations on this person that don't even make sense if they're a fan of It's a Gundam. Now, they might be mistaken in the fact that they thought it was copyright infringement, but that's why counterclaims exist.
Gundam thing. So why in the hell would you copy? I'm just talking like man to man, so to speak. Why would you do that?
How do you and Baja Blast like the Rocky series? Does she have a favorite? Ooh. Yeah, I just had her watch the Rocky series, like, last month. You'd have to ask her specifically what her favorite one was. I like Rocky 4, just because it's ridiculous, and I like the robot.
You know for a fact that you're going to lose this in court. And now I have to give you my personal information in order to teach you that lesson. I don't even care about the money. I care about a broken system that allows YouTubers to have to expose their personal information to anyone who asks. And will leave their channel up for exposure to anybody who doesn't like them, who wants to take advantage of a system that doesn't, you don't even have to prove you have something copyrighted to take a copyright, to issue a copyright strike.
Again, Jeremy, specifically because if YouTube starts deciding this is or this is not copyright infringement, yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. Any amount of interference in that process is going to constitute them being at least somewhat liable for the decisions that are being made, and they don't want to do that. The purpose of the DMCA law, the actual Digital Millennium Copyright Act, and the systems that were put in place by it, is to leave platforms like YouTube completely out of it so they're not liable in any way. If they start being the arbiter of who gets to file claims and who doesn't, then they are inherently becoming involved in a way that they are not supposed to under the law. Like, they would become liable in that situation, and they're not going to do that. Obowan with 100 bits. I may have missed this, but how does Baja think about Taco Bell removing Baja Blast from its menu? They're removing Baja Blast from the menu. That's weird. Is it? Did they lose their exclusivity? Are they just going to start selling it in the stores now? That'd be pretty cool.
Fucking world is that okay? You should have to look. I worked in trademarks. Okay, I worked with the NFL. I worked with MLB, NHL. I worked with Realtree. I know how this stuff works. When I would create licensing, when I owned the license, when I had a license to a product, I had to, when I went to a manufacturer to print, let's say, Realtree calendars, I had to give that manufacturer proof that I had licensing. All right? That's how it works in the real world. But
Jeremy, that's not how it works under the DMCA, though, because we're talking about someone claiming, hey, I think I have the right to that copyright image. Like, again, this has to do with, again, their initial filing, right? Their initial filing, they're saying under perjury that they own that. That's the check. If you believe that they don't own that image, which they do, you already claimed that they do, this isn't about whether or not they own it. The person is called Super Rida. We've already established that that is the person that owns the copyright to that image, right? You get that. So stop trying to fight this, like, tertiary battle of, like, well, I had to prove that I was the owner before they'd print shirts again or whatever, because that person who's going to print the shirts, if they don't check that, they might be liable for printing the shirts. In the case of YouTube, YouTube is being hands-off, again, so they're not liable. The person who's printing the shirts doesn't have that option because they are inherently involved in the process. They are printing the shirts. They are liable. Therefore, they need to check. Because YouTube is being hands-off, they're keeping themselves from becoming liable. It's all about liability, Jeremy. For someone who claims that he's, like, knows about copyright because he worked with it, you don't really seem to understand the underlying reason these things are happening. It all has to do with people being liable along the chain of events. Like, if the t-shirt manufacturer could somehow keep themselves from being liable, they probably wouldn't even care and they'd print whatever. But because they are the ones printing the product, they are liable in the chain of events. YouTube is not checking whether or not someone who files a DMCA actually owns it, because two reasons. First of all, they're already checked under the fact that they're saying under the penalty of perjury, I own this image. So if they don't, you can go and sue them. Okay? That's your recourse. And secondly, YouTube isn't checking it because then they are an arbiter in the process of deciding if something is or is not copyright infringement, and therefore it would make them liable if something happens wrong. And they're not going to do that. That's the distinction.
for whatever reason on YouTube, they just get to screw us. Absolute garbage. Please subscribe.
Jeremy being mad does make me happy, though. Anyway. I think that's it from Jeremy. That video was only put up an hour ago. I'm curious if the Super Rida person decides to copyright strike that too, which I think would be, for sure, a misuse of the system. And at that point, yeah, they probably deserve to get sued. But it would make me laugh. And I think that's basically my standard at this point. You're garbage. Check, please. His outro music sounds like the intro outro from Myths and Legends podcast. I mean, it's probably royalty-free music. YouTube provides you with a whole library of royalty-free music, which is why sometimes on YouTube On YouTube, sometimes you'll have certain creators who have songs that you associate with them, but then you'll go to a different YouTube channel and you'll hear it on that channel and you'll be like, wait, isn't that the, like, I think Your Movie Sucks has that one that's like the whistly song. You know, I can't whistle very well, but you get it. But you might hear that on other channels and be like, why are they playing the song from Your Movie Sucks? It's because it's a copyright-free song that Your Movie Suck pulled from YouTube's library, and other people can too. It just becomes associated with certain things because they're popular. Anyway, let's move on to something else. I guess let's do Carl. So, Sargon has a video about J.K. Rowling and her turfiness.
We defend J.K. Rowling quite a lot on this channel, which is remarkable because I am in no way a fan of J.K. Rowling's work. I've never read a Harry Potter book, I'm too old for that, it wasn't my generation, and I've never watched the films, or at least a complete film, and it's fine. I don't hate it, I don't like it, I simply don't care about it, and I don't care about anything else that she's written. But J.K. Rowling has decided, as she did back in June, but has done much often prior to this, to weigh in on the culture war around the definition of what a woman is. And this is an agenda that's being pushed by radical left intersectionalists, we call them critical theorists, who are trying to deconstruct the categories of man and woman, and then down right way to sex. And so now sex, biological sex, is no longer a real thing.
No. The vast majority of people recognize that sex is a real thing. Sex and gender exist. If you talk to 99% of people on the left, they will agree that they both exist. I'm a trans individual. I recognize sex exists, but I also recognize that it is distinct from gender. My sex, my biological sex, is male. My gender is female. And I think the vast majority of people on the left would agree with that statement.
And so J.K. Rowling has come out and made her defense of it. If sex isn't real, there's no same-sex attraction.
Again, Carl, you're taking what J.K. says at face value, not realizing it's a straw man. People are not saying, at least the vast majority, you can find any fringe opinion on the internet or in the real world if you look hard enough, but no. People who are advocates for trans individuals are not saying that sex isn't real. What they're saying is that sex exists, but so does gender. And your gender identity doesn't necessarily always match up with the sex that you have, right? Like, again, sex, male, gender, female, okay? That's basically all that's being said by the majority of voices on the left. People are not saying sex doesn't exist.
If sex isn't real, the lived reality of women globally is erased. I know and love trans people, but erasing the concept of sex removes the ability of many to meaningfully discuss their lives. It isn't hate to speak the truth. She carries on this argument, but it's a perfectly cogent and accurate argument.
It would be if people were saying that sex isn't real, but they're not. So it's a straw person argument.
There is such a thing as sex. Biological sex is a real, although imperfect, thing that exists. It's a, I don't know, I should call it a process, perhaps. But it is a thing that exists, and we don't need to further justify it. We have seen it with our own eyes, we live it in our own selves, and just because some people don't, that doesn't mean that we don't.
Again, Carl, who on the left, and again, you're going to be like, look at these 3 tweets I found. The vast majority of people recognize that sex exists. The problem with people on the right like you and J.K. Rowling is you don't seem to understand the distinction between sex and gender. That's the difference.
Some people might not, but we certainly do. It doesn't have to be true for every single person. It is just true for the overwhelming majority, and that is frankly good enough. That is a high enough standard for which to hold the idea of sex as a real thing, if, as I said, imperfect.
That's a weird standard, Carl, considering you're an atheist. If you think the standard for something being true is just a lot of people believe it, then you should be a theist, but you're not. So, and again, I recognize sex is real. I do, as do the vast majority of people. But that's not what makes it true, right?
And so this has made J.K. Rowling the world's foremost transphobe. She is apparently now a hate...
I was going to call him Jeremy. Carl, no, this tweet is not what caused people to dislike her. It's the really, really, really long essay she wrote about how she... Hold on, let's just... J.K. Rowling, transgender, essay... J.K. Rowling writes about her reasons for speaking out on sex and gender issues. This isn't an easy piece to write, for reasons that will shortly become clear, but I know it's time to explain myself on the issue surrounded by toxicity. I write this without any desire to add to that toxicity. For people who don't know, last December I tweeted my support for Maya Forstater, a tax specialist who'd lost her job for what were deemed transphobic tweets. She took her case to an employment tribunal, asking the judge to rule on whether a philosophical belief that sex is determined by biology is protected in law. Judge Taylor ruled that it wasn't. My interest in trans issues predated Maya's case by almost 2 years, during which I was followed the debate around the concept of gender identity closely. I've met trans people and read sundry books, blogs, and articles by trans people, gender specialists, intersex people, psychologists, safeguarding experts, social workers, and doctors, and following the discourse online and traditional media. On one level, my interest on the issue has been professional because I'm writing a crime series set in the present day, and my fictional female detective is of an age to be interested in and affected by these issues herself, but on another, it's intensely personal, as I'm about to explain. All the time I've been researching and learning, accusations and threats from trans activists have been bubbling in my Twitter timeline. This was initially triggered by a like when I started taking an interest in gender identity and transgender matters. I began screenshotting and commenting comments that interested me as a way of reminding myself what I might want to research later. On one occasion, I absent-mindedly liked instead of screenshotting. That single like was deemed evidence of wrongthink, and a persistent low-level harassment began. Months later, I compounded, oh no, people don't like that I don't like trans people, I'm shocked. Months later, I compounded my accidental like crime by following Magdalene Burns on Twitter. Magdalene was an immensely brave young feminist and lesbian who was dying of an aggressive brain tumor. I followed her because I wanted to contact her directly, which I succeeded in doing. However, as Magdalene was a great believer in the importance of biological sex and didn't believe lesbians should be called bigots for not dating trans women with penises, dots were joined in the heads of Twitter trans activists, and the level of social media abuse increased. No, the vast majority of people, I think, recognize that, like, if you're not into penis, you're not into penis. That's fine. If you're not into vag, you're not into vag. That's fine. It's okay to have preferences. I mentioned all this only to explain that I knew perfectly well what was going to happen when I supported Maya. I must have been in my 4th or 5th cancellation by then. I expected the threats of violence to be told I was literally killing trans people with my hate, to be called cunt and bitch, and of course for my books to be burned, although one particular abusive man told me he'd composted them. What I didn't expect was the aftermath of my cancellation was the avalanche of emails and letters that came showering down upon me, the overwhelming majority of which were positive, grateful, and supportive. They came from a cross-section of kind, empathetic, and intelligent people, some of whom worked in fields dealing with gender dysphoria, and trans people who are all deeply concerned about the way a socio-political concept is influencing politics, medical practice, and safeguarding. They're worried about the dangers to young people, gay people, and about the erosion of women's and girls' rights. Above all, they worry about a climate of fear that serves nobody, least of all trans youth, well. I really, really hate the fact that she tries to couch this in, I care about trans people. And you'll see as we go on why it's ridiculous that she's framing it in such a way. I stepped back from Twitter for many months before and after tweeting support for Maya because I knew I was doing nothing good for my mental health. I only returned because I wanted to share a free children's book during the pandemic. Immediately, activists who clearly believed themselves to be good, kind, and progressive people swarmed back into my timeline, assuming a right to police my speech, accused me of hatred, calling me misogynistic slurs, and above all, as every woman involved in this debate will know, turf. Well, 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 if it isn't the consequences of my own words and actions. If you don't already know, and why should you, TERF is an acronym coined by trans activists, which stands for Trans Exclusionary Radical Feminist. In practice, a huge and divisive cross-section of women are currently being called TERFs, and the vast majority have never been radical feminists. I agree that TERF gets overused when transphobe would usually suffice. Examples of the so-called TERFs range from a mother of gay child who was afraid their children wanted to transition to escape homophobic bullying, to a hitherto totally unfeminist older lady who's vowed never to visit Mark and Spencer again because they're allowing any man who says they identify as a woman into the women's changing rooms. Oh my god, here's where we start with the shit. Okay, first of all, mother of a gay child who was afraid their child wanted to transition to escape homophobic bullying. Doubt. That doesn't happen. Because you know who gets bullied just as much, if not more, than gay kids? Trans kids! That would make no sense. And that's the kind of excuse that a mother who doesn't want to accept that their kid is trans would try and make up in order to excuse the fact that they don't want to believe their kid is trans. No right-minded individual thinks, boy, I sure am being bullied for being gay. You know what would make me be bullied less? Being trans! Absolutely ridiculous. And anyway, older lady who vowed never to visit Mark and Spencer's, which is a shop, I believe, again, because they're allowing any man who says they identify as a woman into the women's changing rooms. Again, do you see the problem here? Any man who says they identify as a woman into the women's changing room? No. No. It's about letting trans women use the women's changing rooms and trans men use the men's changing rooms. Do you think, and this is what I don't get about people like J.K. Rowling, who are like so hysterical about this idea that some hitherto unknown cis man is going to sneak into a changing room by claiming they're a woman. Like, J.K., what changing rooms or bathrooms are you going to with security guards that are stopping people at the door? If anyone wanted to go into a changing room and assault someone, they would be able to do it. And that's scary, isn't it? The thought that anyone can do anything at any time, but that has nothing to do with whether or not someone should be allowed to go into a certain changing room because their gender identity doesn't match their sex. Like, JK, the kind of people who are asking to use the women's changing room are not typically like, oh, I'm a big burly lumberjack bearded man who claims that I'm a woman. That's not something that happens. What happens is maybe someone like me. And JK's gonna look at me and, of course, see that I don't pass. And she's gonna see me as a predator. But, like, JK, maybe I just want to try on some pants. Like, what are you talking about? Why do you think that stopping someone from going into a changing room is somehow protecting women? It's ridiculous. Pier Squire says, meanwhile, Sir Terry Pratchett, quote, even such obviously black and white distinctions as alive, dead, male, female turn out, on close examination, to be more like contiguous merging than sharp discontinuity, end quote. And then Cascadia 93, us NBs completely break these people's brains. We break that, if P nor then boy rule, me and HHHHH9998 are transphobes' worst nightmare. True. Let's see, ironically, radical feminists aren't even trans exclusionary. They include trans men in their feminism because they were born women. So you just did the opposite of what you should have done there, JK, okay? So we actually have an instance where someone is including trans men,
That's right,
but they're doing so by including them in feminism, which trans men don't necessarily identify with other than being allies, because trans men are men, not women, you absolute bitch.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
The Distant Red with a bit to be fair, Terry Pratchett wrote better fiction. Yet another reason to cancel JK. Good Abels, thank you for following. But accusations of turfery have been sufficient to intimidate many people. Good. Institutions and organizations I once admired who are cowering before the tactics of the playground. They'll call us transphobic, they'll say, and I hate trans people. What's next? They'll say you've got fleas? Gee, JK, it's almost like people don't want to do things that are exclusionary to groups that are already treated like shit. Weird. Speaking as a biological woman, a lot of people in... you mean cis. You're a cis woman. Speaking as a biological woman, a lot of people in positions of power really need to grow a pair, which is doubtless literally impossible according to the kind of people who argue that clownfish prove humans aren't a dimorphic species. Ah! So why am I doing this? Why speak up? Why not quietly do my research and keep my head down? Well, I've got 5 reasons for being worried about the new trans activism and deciding to speak up. Firstly, I have a charitable trust that focuses on alleviating social deprivation in Scotland, with a particular emphasis on women and children. Among other things, my trust supports projects for female prisoners and for survivors of domestic and sexual abuse. I also fund medical research into MS, a disease that behaves very differently in men and women. It's been clear to me for a while that the new trans activism is having, or is likely to have if all demands are met, a significant impact on many of the causes I support, because it's pushing to erode the legal definition of sex and replace it with gender. So basically, JK is concerned because she doesn't want her money to go and help trans women domestic or sexual abuse victims. She's like, I can't discriminate if they make it so trans women are included in women. That's her first point. Is J.K. Rowling is afraid that some of her hundreds of millions of dollars, a little bit of that she puts in her charity, might accidentally go to a trans woman. The horror! Oh, I missed Catalina Gearbox's donation, sorry. It makes sense that JK wrote books about magic and wizards because she doesn't believe in science. Got her.
There's nothing funny about the tools of
Andrew
capitalism.
Dickerson with a bit. I just realized that if Jeremy existed in the boys universe, he'd totally make a video about how the Seven adds another woman to the team. Forced diversity for anyone. That's true. That's sad, but it's true.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
McLippy, thank you for subscribing. The second reason that I'm an ex-teacher and the founder at a children's charity, which gives me an interest in both education and safeguarding. Like many others, I have deep concerns, furrowed brow, about the effect the trans rights movement is having on both. What does that even mean? JK, you can't write something that isn't even a paragraph. It's like a sentence that means nothing. The second reason that I'm an ex-teacher and founder of a children's charity, which gives me an interest in both education and safeguarding. Like many others, I have deep concerns about the effect the trans rights movement is having on both. This is the same argument, and the reason she doesn't spell this out is because she knows it'll make her look like crap. For obvious reasons. She's making the same argument people used to make about gay people, like in the 90s or the 80s. Like, if we start letting people have rights because they're gay, then kids are gonna want to go and turn themselves gay. It's the same argument. It's the same exact argument. It's barely reskinned. Oh, all these people who are trans and had to be in the closet in the past are being allowed to be themselves and have rights? Well, we better not allow that because then the kids will want to make themselves trans. Stupid argument. Ridiculous argument. The third is that as a much banned author, I'm interested in freedom of speech and have publicly defended it, even unto Donald Trump. JK, no one has stopped your freedom of speech. You, in fact, are trying to stop the free speech of others who want to say to you, hey, you're kind of a jerk for saying a bunch of transphobic things, and for saying things like, I run women's charities, but I'm afraid that a trans woman might get involved and then some of my charity money might go to help her. I only care about domestic sexual assault victims with vaginas. I don't care about anyone else. Like, it's ridiculous.
There's nothing
It's
funny about the
ridiculous.
tools of capitalism.
Guess Katie in 93 with a bit. This is a fight I'm prepared to have with Harry Potter obsessed mother. She has a whole room dedicated to it. She isn't a bigot, a transphobe. She accepts me and my bi sister, but she thinks our politics are too reactionary and left. I don't know if she'd believe me if I said that their JK is a horrid person. Yeah, she won't. The fourth is where things to start get really personal. I'm concerned about the huge explosion in young women wishing to oh, here we go. In young women wishing to transition, and also about the increasing numbers who seem to be detransitioning, returning to their original sex. This is awful. The amount of people who detransition after transitioning. Do you guys know the statistic on this? The thing that JK is so concerned about. You'd think by the fact that she's so concerned about this, it'd be like 30% or 50%. It's less than 1%. It's less than 1%. I would take bets that you couldn't find me almost any other decision in life that you make that's as like important and a big of an issue as transition, and find a thing that doesn't have a larger regret rate than 1%. Ridiculous. Because they regret taking steps that have in some cases altered their bodies irrevocably and taken away their fertility. Some say they decided to transition after realizing they were same-sex attracted, and that transitioning was partially driven by homophobia, either in society and their families. I'm not saying this has never happened, but I've talked to so many trans people, especially after coming out. Not once in any of the stories have I heard anything about it being driven by homophobia. Because it wouldn't make sense. Do you understand that trans people in this day and age, in the year of our Lord, 2020, get treated worse than gay people? Like, I'm not saying that, like, if you're a lesbian or a gay person, or a bi person, I'm bi, that you're not still getting treated worse than straight people by society. But like trans people, oh my god, people hate trans people. Like, it's a ridiculous argument to be like, well, I was worried about being, insulted for being gay. So instead, I decided to be something people hate even more than being gay. And in fact, it's a lot more visible most of the time. It's the dumbest argument I've ever heard. Most people probably aren't aware, and again, in families too, that annoys me too. What family is homophobic, but totally okay with trans people and their kid transitioning? It's the dumbest position, and I can't believe she wrote this without realizing how stupid she sounded. Oh, we're on a hype train, 94% with 2 minutes remaining. Cool. Most people probably aren't aware.
About the tools of capitalism.
Doodle Muffin, thanks for the bits. Most people probably aren't aware, I certainly wasn't until I started researching this issue properly, that 10 years ago the majority of people wanting to transition to the opposite sex were male. The ratio is now reversed. The UK has experienced a 4,400 increase in girls being referred for transition treatment. Autistic girls are hugely overrepresented in the numbers. Yeah, autistic people, interestingly, this is true both in trans women and trans men. Autistic individuals are overrepresented in the trans community. I don't know what the connection is. I really don't. I couldn't answer the question for you. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist, but it is interesting. But that doesn't mean that they're not trans. And the fact that there's a 4,400 increase is probably just because people are realizing this issue is more out in the open. Trans men barely get talked about today, much less in the past. Do you know how many trans men there were probably out there in the past that just had no way to contextualize their feelings because that just wasn't something that was talked about? Even stereotypically back in the day when the only thing that got talked about in regards to trans women were like jokes about, like, oh, you're gonna go pick up a prostitute, you better make sure it's not a man. Stupid jokes. That was like the only discussion and comment that society had on trans individuals in the past, was making fun of them. But even then, like, trans men just were not part of the conversation. So of course the rates are going to go up, or appear to go up, because people are open about it now because they understand their own feelings in a way that society didn't talk about before. The same phenomenon has been seen in the U.S. in 2018. American physician and researcher Lisa Littman set out to explore it. In an interview, she said, "Parents online were describing a very unusual pattern of transgender identification." I hate this, too. Imagine if I said, boy, gay identification sure is up.
About the tools of
Like,
capitalism.
what do you mean identification? Like, I get it, they're identifying as gay, but if you're identifying as gay or you're identifying as trans, you're gay or you're trans. Where multiple friends and even entire friend groups became transgender identified at the same time. Boy, let me read about that. The whole group of people who became transgender at the same time? Sure. Gimpig with 150 bits. Would you rather live in a world where reassignment surgery isn't available but society is completely accepted, or current world? I don't know. I'm not going to answer that. Moo move with 5 bits. I have the last of my bits. To hell with transphobes. Yeah, thanks. I would have been remiss had I not considered social contagion and peer influence as potential factors. Oh boy, I sure do love when my identity is considered a social contagion. Thanks, JK. But sure, you're really, really behind trans people. That sounds great. I'm a social contagion, but I'm sure you're very, very supportive of trans individuals. Ridiculous. Littman mentioned Tumblr, Reddit, Instagram, and YouTube as contributing factors to the rapid onset gender dysphoria. There is no thing as rapid onset gender dysphoria. This hasn't been debunked a number of times. Jangles has a YouTube video about it. It's based on a completely defunct study, and the study was entirely based on a group on a website that's for parents who don't think their kids are trans, but the kids have come out as trans, and it's interviewing the parents about it, and the parents are like, well, it came out of nowhere. They never acted weird before, as if the parents don't understand that the kid was hiding things from them, or that the kid was, like, socialized a certain way. It's complete bunk. It's not even a real study. It's ridiculous. And the fact that J.K. Rowling puts this in her thing to try and explain, oh, I just have very real concerns, outs her as an idiot. She's an idiot. If she looked into this study and legit thought that it was right, and I'm being generous calling it a study, it's not. It was a survey of a bunch of transphobic parents of trans children. She's an idiot. She's an absolute moron. And that's being generous, because the alternative is that she recognizes that it's false and that it's completely unrepresentative of reality, but she's using it to push her point. So I'm being nice by calling J.K. Rowling an idiot. Her paper caused a fervor. She was accused of bias and spreading misinformation about transgender people, because she was. Subjected to a tsunami of abuse and a concerted campaign to discredit both her and her work.
Capitalism.
Again, all founded. It's founded to discredit work that is not reputable. Thank you, Cascadia93, for a bit. They literally did this stuff for gay cis men and lesbian cis women. This argument is so dated. I know. I don't know how they are just repeating the same, like, gay panic stuff that existed in the past, and they're too obtuse to recognize it. The journal took the paper offline and re-reviewed it before republishing it. However, her career took a similar hit to that suffered by Maya Forrester. Good. Lisa Littleman had dared challenge one of the central tenets of trans activism, which is that a person's gender identity is innate, like sexual orientation. Nobody, the trans activists insisted, could ever be persuaded into being trans. Correct. You're either trans or you're not. The same way that you're either gay or bi or straight or whatever. Like, you can't be coerced. Can you imagine? Again, it's the same stuff as, like, the gay panic arguments. Like, the kids are gonna want to be gay if we let gay people exist in society openly. Like, I mean, more kids will probably come out because they're not going to be abused by society as much for doing so, but that doesn't mean they spontaneously became gay or became trans. It just means fewer people had to live in the closet because society is more accepting of people who are different than the majority of people within it. Cascadia 93, exactly, that's what I was saying, yeah. Is the hype train over yet? Yeah, I think we got to level 1. Where did the hat go? This matches with my outfit, kind of. Purple Carmen Sandiego. This hat's too small for my head, though. Ugh. The argument of many current trans activists is that if you don't let a gender dysphoric teenage transition, they will kill themselves, because the statistics bear that out. In an article explaining why he resigned from the Travis Stock and NHS gender clinic in England, psychiatrist Marcus Evans stated that claims that children will kill themselves not permitted to transition do not align substantially with any robust data or studies in this area. Yes, they do. There are countless studies about trans suicide rates, especially teens. Yes, as it turns out, when you don't let trans teenagers at least go on puberty blockers, then yeah, their suicide rates go up. Nor do they align with the cases I have encountered over decades as a psychotherapist. Sherman5, thank you for the bits. The Flower Girl 13, Hannah, how can I help my brother to get over his internalized homophobia? Oh boy, I'm the last person in the world to ask about that. Just ask my therapist. I still deal with internalized transphobia, so I don't know. I really don't. The writings of young trans men reveal a group of notably sensitive and clever people. The more of their accounts of gender dysphoria I've read with their insightful descriptions of anxiety, disassociation, eating disorder, self-harm, and self-hatred, the more I've wondered whether, if I'd been born 30 years later, I too might have tried to transition. JK, no. Not if representing yourself as masculine, if identifying your gender as a man, if that doesn't sound like it would help you, then no, you wouldn't. Where's this idea coming from that trans people, like, how do I put this? Like, it's like do they think they just go into like a psychiatrist's office and go like, man, I'm depressed, and the psych goes, well, maybe you're transgender. That's not how it works. You bring that up, not the psychiatrist. Cascadia 93, I for one am such an MB, I am a male at birth, demi-boy who presents male in fashion and attitude, but I express often rather feminine online and amongst friends. I don't find that I have the right to claim this flag or the struggle. Sherman 5 with a bit, I love your witchy look today, very enchanting. Thank you. The allure of escaping womanhood would have been huge. I struggled with severe OCD as a teenager. If I'd found community and sympathy online that I couldn't find in my immediate environment, I believe I could have persuaded to turn myself into the son my father had openly said he'd preferred. Yikes. JK, no. No. You're not describing gender dysphoria. That's not what it is. When I read about the theory of gender identity, I remember how mentally sexless I felt in youth. I remember Colette's description of herself as a, quote, mental hermaphrodite, and Simone de Beauvoir's words, it is perfectly natural for the future woman to feel indignant at the limitations imposed on her by her sex. The real question is not why she should reject them. The problem is rather to understand why she accepts them. As I don't have a realistic possibility of becoming a man back in the 80s, there were trans men in the 80s, I'm sure. Probably not as many. I mean, there were probably as many, but they were in the closet or didn't know about it. But, like, yeah, you could have been a trans man in the 80s. It had to be books and music that got me through both my mental health issues and the sexualized scrutiny and judgment that set so many girls to war against their bodies in their teens. My God. Oh, you have gender dysphoria? Have you tried listening to music? This is the stupidest. I hate J.K. Rowling so much. Fortunately for me, I found my own sense of otherness and my ambivalence about being a woman reflected in the work of female writers and musicians who reassured me that in spite of everything a sexist world tries to throw at a female-bodied, it's fine not to feel pink frilly and compliant inside your own head. It's okay to feel confused, dark, both sexually and non-sexual, unsure of what you are. Again, you're not describing gender dysphoria, JK. Like, if you're talking to a therapist about this, they're not going immediately to identify you as having gender dysphoria, because that's not what it is. Every teenager feels uncomfortable with themselves. Every teenager feels uncomfortable with their bodies in some ways. But it's specific ways in which they feel uncomfortable that make it gender dysphoria.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Cascadia93, wow, conflating this with Butch. How original. Yeah. She says, I want to be very clear here. I know transition will be a solution for some gender dysphoric people. I would say that it's the only treatment that people with gender dysphoria have at their disposal. The Distant Red. Simone de Beauvoir practically, not actually, invented sex gender distinction, and JK has the gall to quote her on this. I don't know anything about that individual. Although I'm also aware through extensive research that studies have consistently shown that between 60 and 90% of gender dysphoric teens will grow out of their dysphoria. Ah! You gonna cite that? You gonna cite that source, JK? Or are you just gonna say it? Really? You're gonna say 90% of gender dysphoric teens grow out of it? My God, the bullshittery is at an all-time high. Goth Geek Gaming. There was a woman that did an 18-month experiment in which she disguised herself as a man, after which she ended up admitting herself to a mental hospital for depression that arose from said experiment. Yeah. Like, someone who doesn't identify as the opposite gender, if they tried to live as such, they would hate it. They would probably then experience gender dysphoria because they'd be representing themselves as a gender they don't identify with. And that would be like right? Like, you'd understand what I'm saying? Like, if you didn't have gender dysphoria and then you transition, then you would have gender dysphoria because you're now representing yourself as something you don't internally, like, identify with. My God, JK's an idiot. The Stellar Sea Cow. I mean, I'm one of those feminists who hates gender roles and doesn't think femininity should be defined to the specificities that society says makes one female, and the same for masculinity and being masculine, but holy crap, this ain't it. This isn't it. Yeah. Again and again, I've been told to just meet some trans people. I have, in addition to a few younger people who are all adorable. I happen to know a self-described transsexual woman who's older than I am and wonderful. Gotta throw that in there. I recognize that some, like, trans older people identify as transsexual and not transgender, but boy, does it make me go yikes. Although she's open about her past as a gay man, I've always found it hard to think of her as anything other than a woman, and I believe and certainly hope she's completely happy to have transitioned. Being older, though, she went through a long and rigorous process of evaluation, psychotherapy, and staged transformation. The current explosion of trans activism is urging a removal of almost all robust systems through which candidates for sex reassignment were once required to pass. Ah! No! Again, no. Do you know, for one thing, anyone, literally anyone, in any period of time could start, like, presenting as a gender that more so identifies with them, but it might not, like, conform to their sex, right? Like, even regardless of the fact that I am on hormones and have been for over a year, like, I could still dress like this. I could still identify as such. And there's never been any barrier to that ever. But if we're talking about, like, medical stuff, like hormones, no. It's difficult to get on hormones. What are you talking about? The idea, excuse me, that there's just, like, no, like, bar whatsoever that you have to hurdle over in order to get on them is ridiculous. It is absolutely absurd and a lie. It is a lie. She is lying. Claire the Egg, does she not realize how traumatizing the real-life experiences step of transitions can be for trans people? I don't think so. We're living... What else does she say? A man who intends to have no surgery and take no hormones may secure himself a gender recognition certificate and be a woman in the sight of the law. Many people aren't aware of this. Yeah, that's fine. Like, presumably they're going to still present themselves as a woman, right? Like, some people just don't want to have surgery because of the inherent risks involved in the surgery. And some people don't want to go on hormones because it will make them infertile. And that's their business. It doesn't mean they're not trans. Like, this is a ridiculous thing. This is called transmedicalism.
There's nothing
It's not
funny
cool.
about the tools of capitalism.
Any old person who is transgender and wants to make it harder for people younger than them to transition reeks of the same energy as a parent not walking to provide for their kids because they had shitty parents.
That's
Yeah.
right, capitalistic propaganda.
Suddy King, thank you for following. We're living through the most misogynistic period I've experienced. Back in the
There's
80s,
nothing
I
funny
imagined
about
that my
tools of
future daughters,
capitalism.
should I have any, would have it far better than I ever did. But between the backlash against feminism and a porn-saturated online culture, oh god, is she like a sex-negative feminist too that doesn't like the existence of porn? And we can talk about like the structural stuff of porn and how like a lot of porn depicts women in a very degrading light. But I would say with things like OnlyFans, where sex workers can work for themselves and dictate their own stuff, that's a positive thing. If we're talking about like Pornhub and how sex performers get treated there,
There's nothing funny
that's a
about
different
the tools of
discussion.
capitalism.
Goth Geek Gaming says, I meant to say cis men don't want to go through all the hoops. Yeah, that's what I don't get. Like, do they think, and Goth Geek Gaming, the first one that was a reply to, says, the hoops I had to jump through to get surgeries I got as a trans woman is ridiculous. Cis men don't go through all the hoops we have to, right? Like, what is their view of cis men that they think a cis man is going to go through all this effort to be seen as a woman? Why would you do so? And if like her postulate is that it's to assault women, why? It doesn't make it easier to assault women. It doesn't make you less culpable if you're caught. There would be no purpose to doing so. It makes no sense. If there was someone out there who wanted to assault
nothing funny
women,
about the
they
tools
would
of
just
capitalism.
assault women. It happens all the time. It's why like 1 in 5 women, I think in the United States, has some form of sexual assault, like experience. Like this, we're not at a shortage of sexual assailants in the United States or the UK. People don't need to be putting on dresses in order to do so. The Distant Red with 5 bits, bit of a long one. Transgender and other LGBTQ plus people are documented for over 3,000 years. That predates most countries. The Weimar Republic had extensive knowledge documenting trans people and transitioning until most of the research was burned by, you guessed it, the Nazis. It's a bit telling when you are on the same side as the Nazis. Yeah. Where else are we? Never have I seen women denigrated and dehumanized to the extent they are now. From the leader of the free world's long history of sexual assault accusations and his proud boasts of grabbing them by the P word, to the incel involuntary celibate movement that rages against women who won't give them sex, to the trans activists who declare that TERFs need punching and re-educating. My God, why are you including trans activists in the same breath as incels and the president who has committed sexual assault? Trans people are just mad because you are doing the same thing that people on the right do. You're identifying what women are based on their genitals.
There's nothing
And I
funny about the
recognize
tools
that
of
there's a
capitalism.
difference between like me as a trans woman and the experiences of a cis woman. I would never argue that's not the case, which is why if there's like a women's issue, I try not to like throw my hat in the ring if it's not something that I would feel comfortable talking about regardless of gender, right? Specifically because like I was raised and socialized as male, right? Because my sex when born was male. So my transition, while it puts me more in line with how I feel, I understand that I don't have the same experiences of a cis woman. I don't even face the same problems necessarily. We have different sets of problems, but there's a Venn diagram, and in the center there's a good portion that we share in common in terms of issues to tackle together. That's not the point. My existing is not trying to diminish the existence of cis women, because it doesn't. Why would it? Anyway. I've read all the arguments about femaleness not residing in the sexed body and the assertions that biological women don't have common experiences, and I find them too deeply misogynistic and regressive. So the progressive position is to say that women's experiences are entirely centered upon the fact that they have vaginas? Okay, interesting. Kinda seems counterintuitive, but you do you, JK. It's also clear that one of the objectives of denying the importance of sex is to erode what some see as the cruelty of the cruelly segregationist idea of women having their own biological realities, or just as threatening, unifying realities that make them a cohesive political class. The hundreds of emails I've received in the last few days prove this erosion concerns many others just as much. It isn't enough for women to be trans allies. Women must accept and admit that there is no material difference between trans women and themselves. Again, no, people aren't saying that. We're asking you to recognize trans women as women because trans women are women and trans men are men. But I'm not telling you that you cannot make a distinction between trans women and cis women. You can. Like, if we're talking about an issue of, like, let's say, women's reproductive rights, whatever that might be, whether it's rights to, like, contraception, or if we're talking about, like, the right to safe and legal abortions. Like, I totally understand that. That's not a conversation I should take the lead in. Recently, I did one debate on it, and even that I wasn't, like, super fond of doing, but nonetheless, I did it. Maybe I shouldn't have. But either way, like, at the end of the day, I was advocating for women to be able to make their own decisions in regard to their bodies, right? And I can be an ally in that way, even though it's not a reality I face myself, since I don't have a uterus. Surprise! But that doesn't mean that in other contexts, in the context in general of talking about, like, how are we going to talk about and identify trans women, it doesn't mean you have the right to then say, well, they're just men. They're just men wearing women's clothes and playing pretend. Like, that's not helpful to the conversation because it's not true. It's not even reductionist. It's just not the reality of the situation. Like, again, this is all nuance, and for some reason, JK seems completely incapable of recognizing that it's okay for there to be nuance here. Like, if you want to talk about, like, the rights, again, I'll just go back to the same example, the rights of women who can reproduce because they have uteruses, you can do so, but then again, you're probably then also excluding some trans men, right? Who may not be on hormones, but who might be able to reproduce and may want to do so. I understand that's not the majority, but again, it does involve them. That's the inherency of nuance. There are always going to be some outliers, and there are always going to be some things that complicate the issue. But that doesn't mean you completely disregard the outliers and the things that make the issue more complicated just because they make you uncomfortable. But as many women have said before me, woman is not a costume, woman is not an idea in a man's head. Women is not a pink brain or liking for Jimmy Choos or any of the other sexist ideas now somehow touted as progressive. Moreover, the inclusive language that calls female people menstruators and people with vulvas strikes many women as dehumanizing and demeaning. I understand why trans activists consider this language to be appropriate and kind, but for those of us who've had degrading slurs spat at us by violent men, it's not neutral, it's hostile and alienating. Wait, who's calling you menstruators and people with vulvas? What? No one is doing that. People draw the distinction between cis women and trans women by calling you cis. What? You're the one who's trying to define yourselves by the fact that you have certain reproductive parts, not us. Which brings me to the fifth reason I'm deeply concerned about the consequences of the current trans activism. I've been in the public eye now for over 20 years and have never been talked publicly about a domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor. This isn't because I'm ashamed of those things happen to me, but because they're traumatic to revisit and remember. I also feel protective of my daughters from their first marriage. She's gonna hide behind being a sexual assault victim, which I find reprehensible, considering I am also one. So fuck her for doing this, first of all, let me just say. I don't want to claim sole ownership of a story that belongs to her too, however. In a short while ago, I asked her how she'd feel if I were publicly honest about that part of my life, and she encouraged me to go ahead. I'm mentioning these things now, not in an attempt to garner sympathy. Right. But out of solidarity with huge numbers of women who have histories like mine, who've been slurred as bigots for having concerns about single-sex spaces. You're literally reading about bathrooms. JK, who cares? You know what you do in a bathroom? You go into a bathroom and you mind your own business, and you pee or you poop and you leave. At no point do you, or in my opinion, should you have any interaction with any of the other people in the bathroom.
There's nothing funny about the tools of
JK
capitalism.
wrote this in the first place because she was mad about this headline. Hold on, let me... Opinion, creating a more equal post-COVID-19 world for people who menstruate. Oh, okay. And that's fine, because again, people who menstruate involves many trans men. Like, this is not diminishing you as a human being. It's describing certain people. JK, I understand that you might be frustrated that things are complicated and more complicated than when you were a kid, but nuance is not the enemy. It's how we describe things accurately. If you're Larry Craig, you get arrested. I don't even know who that is. She continues, I managed to escape my first violent marriage with some difficulty, but I'm now married to a truly good and principled man, safe and secure in ways I never in a million years expected to be. However, the scars left by violence and sexual assault don't disappear. No matter how loved you are and no matter how much money you've made, my perennial jumpiness is a family joke. And even I know it's funny, but I pray my daughters never have the same reason I do for hating sudden loud noises or finding people behind me when I haven't heard them approaching. If you'd come inside my head and understand what I feel when I read about a trans woman dying at the hands of a violent man, you'd find solidarity and kinship. I have a visceral sense of terror in which those trans women will have spent their last seconds on Earth, because I too have known moments of blind fear when I realized that the only thing keeping me alive was the shaky self-restraint of my attacker. And again, think about this. She's saying she has solidarity with trans women who've been attacked and murdered, but at the same time she's saying, but I don't want you in women's spaces. So you should go to the men's bathroom, even if you, like, have had surgery, and even if you don't have a penis anymore. Not that it should matter, but regardless, even if you look like a woman, act like a woman, and in every respect are a woman, you should go to the men's bathroom. Do you not see how that's opening trans individuals up to being assaulted? Do you not understand that? Cascadia 93. She's safe and secure in her billionaire bubble. Yeah. I believe the majority of trans-identified people, just say trans men and women, or trans individuals if you want to be like, and be inclusive. Calling people trans-identified people is something that TERFs often do, because it makes them get a step between, well, they're not really trans. Trans isn't really a thing. They're trans-identified people. It's a thing. Not only pose zero threat to others, but are vulnerable for all the reasons I've outlined. Trans people need and deserve protection. Like women, they're most likely to be killed by sexual partners. Trans women who work in the sex industry, particularly trans women of color, are at particular risk, like every other domestic abuse and sexual assault survivor I know. I feel nothing but empathy and solidarity with trans women who've been abused by men. Then why, JK, was the first concern you brought up in regard to, oh, the trans activism movement, was the fact that you have charities that give money to organizations that help sexual assault victims, women in particular, and your concern seemed to be, oh no, it might help trans women too. Really? She says, so I want trans women to be safe. At the same time, I do not want to make natal girls and women less safe. You could just say cis women. The implication that allowing trans women to use the same bathroom as cis women, which is something that's been the case for decades, by the way. This was never an issue before these idiots made an issue. You've already been in a bathroom with a trans person. I hate to break it to you. You definitely have. Like, a little under 1% or something of the population is trans. You've probably been to public bathrooms more than 100 times. Statistically, you're probably been in the same bathroom as a trans person. And you know what? You didn't even notice. You know why? Because you're not looking at the people's genitals when you're in the bathroom with them. Unless you're a weirdo. When you throw open the doors of bathrooms and changing rooms to any man who believes or feels he's a woman, and as I've said, gender confirmation certificates may now be granted without any need for surgery or hormones, then you open the door to any and all men who wish to come inside. That's the simple truth. JK! Please, show me a single instance in the history of the world where a cis man has somehow gamed the system and decided to be a trans woman just to get into bathrooms. Again, JK, there are not security guards at bathrooms. Anyone can walk into any bathroom at any time. It would make no sense for someone to falsely identify as a woman in order to get into a bathroom when if you're already committing the crime of assault, you're not really gonna care about trespass.
Especially since she seemingly doesn't understand how complicated it is to get a gender recognition certificate in the UK. I don't know if anyone watches Jamie on YouTube, but he's a trans man, and it took him so long to get one, and you have to have signed medical things from doctors and therapists and psychiatrists, and then an entire committee takes that and photos of you and written documents where you explain why you want to have a gender recognition certificate, and they take all of this stuff, all of this super personal stuff, your story, and they decide whether or not you're worthy of getting a gender recognition certificate, which will allow you to change your birth certificate and your driver's license and stuff in the UK. She is making it seem like you can just walk into any corner store and say, "Here, I'd like you to give me a gender recognition certificate." And that's not true. It's not true. And yes, Jammy Dodger Jamie.
Love you too. The fact that she's using her assault to justify... And I completely understand that she might genuinely fear this because of her assault. I get that. PTSD is a bitch and it can cause you to see scary things around every corner even when they aren't there.
It's awful.
But that doesn't give you the right to hurt other people for your own protection when that protection is against an imaginary enemy. There are men, and women for that matter, who commit sexual assault. Most sexual assailants are men, though. But to act as though equal treatment for trans women or trans men is somehow going to help cis men assault women is imaginary. It's not the case. It just isn't. There's no case in which it would help a cis man assault someone. There just isn't one.
I thought you had a hair stuck in your mouth. And now I don't see it, so.
Yeah, I love you too.
I'm sorry. This is so...
It's okay. I'm done with that anyway. I just wanted to get some context so we could talk about Carl's video.
Did this come out? Did Carl's video come out after her book thing?
This is from a few days ago.
Ugh.
Anyway, so J.K. Rowling, whether she realizes it or not, is in fact transphobic. She's using her fear of cis men as an excuse to fearmonger around the existence of trans women in public bathrooms, which again have been a thing forever. You've already been in a bathroom with a trans person. I guarantee it.
Of trans people, because she does not accept that trans women are women. She believes that trans women are biologically male, and to be a woman...
Again, the sex-gender distinction is something that has already been made by people on the left and in academia. But saying that, like, trans women are men is inaccurate, because when we're saying trans women are women, we're talking about gender identity. What's complicated about that? Wind chanter with a bit. Ew, Hannah, there's a picture of poop on your screen.
Could I say something?
Okay, but I gotta get to the video.
Okay. Also, sex is a spectrum.
Woman,
It's bimodal.
you need to be an adult human female. So this means that the radical lefties really don't like her very much.
They don't like her because, again, she's using imaginary boogeymen situations in order to demonize an already put upon minority group. That's why people don't like her. Because she's fear-mongering over an issue that isn't something that exists and turning people against trans individuals and trans rights movements. How Jake's trash can get out of his room.
And recently she released a new book. Now, I'm just going to say, I haven't read this book. I don't even know if it's out yet, actually. So I
think review copies are out. I'm not sure if it actually got put on bookstore shelves yet, but I know there were some reviews of it going around.
I don't think anyone's had the chance other than a few critics. But her latest book, as Pink News inform us, is about a murderous cis man who dresses as a woman to kill his victims.
About the tools of capitalism.
And once again, this is a problem, Sargon, because she is using an imaginary boogeyman scenario in order to get people to not support trans individuals. That's the problem. And Sargon is very amused by this. This is a pretty good Sargon screenshot if you wanted to take it. But, like, that's a problem. She's continually pushing this idea that if you allow trans people or trans women into women's spaces, that it's going to lead somehow to cis men using it to assault women when there's no evidence that that's the case. I think we're all aware that Sargon doesn't read things. Dude Spanking Dude says, so went to my grandma's and then my dad took us to see rich houses, and I kid you not, a $2 million house had a Trump poster that said, F your feelings, F Florida. Yeah, Florida's bad.
That's going to go down well with the alphabet people, isn't it? You can imagine how the response to this has gone, but let's find out some details first. Again, we haven't read this book, so we're just going off what Pink News and their wonderful investigative LGBT plus investigative journalism has found.
Are you the only... Yeah, they're LGBT, Carl. It's a site specifically about LGBT news. Are you trying to make fun of it because that's what it is? That's a really, really stupid thing. Even for you to be like, silly gays, you can't do a journalism.
The new book finds her private detective protagonist, Corriman Strike, that's a horrible name, investigating a cis male.
I have heard, and this is completely divorced from... I heard this before I knew anything about JK's turfiness and how she's, like, really, really anti-trans. I've heard her books in this series are really bad. I've heard they're awful, and there's a good reason I've never read them, even beside the turf stuff. Devious Chillster with 50 bits, by the way, have the miniest of cleanses, since I know dealing with Sargon and turfs in general is a wild thing to do. Oh, that's cute. Cute kitty. Sargon is unironically against letters.
There's nothing
I think he thinks it's clever to be like, the letter people. Yeah, it's an acronym, Sargon. Actually, is it an acronym or is it an initialism because it doesn't actually spell out a word? Whatever. The point stands, like, that's not a clever jab, Sargon, just because, yeah, the LGBT community is represented by an initialism.
Serial killer who dresses as a woman to kill his cis female victims, according to an early write-up. That's interesting. Because, and again, I haven't read it, but what that says to me is not that trans people are the problem, because after all...
Again, Sargon, and Sargon may or may not know this. I don't know if Sargon has actually read the J.K. Rowling thing, like we just went through most of it, or not. Doesn't really matter. J.K. Rowling knows if she comes out and just says she doesn't like trans people, people are rightly going to dogpile on her. So she tries to do this proxy war in the public opinion war, where she's like, oh, I love trans people. It's just that actually we need to deny the rights of trans people to use bathrooms that make them feel safe, because if we allow that, then actually a big burly scary sexual assaulting man might come in under the auspices of being trans. So we need to make sure that trans people don't have rights for that reason. It's ridiculous. Like, imagine if I don't even know what an accurate comparison would be. Like, imagine if we were debating segregation and someone was like, oh, we can't undo segregation. Why not? Well, someone who wants to assault people might put on blackface and come into the diner and shoot us. Like, what? Why would they do that? They could just come in and do that anyway if they have ill intent. That has nothing to do with whether or not you should give rights to people or give them the, like what? It doesn't make any sense.
Well, it is a cis man attacking cis women.
So that's the problem. It's that she's, again, writing this book and using an imaginary boogeyman to act like, well, I would be in favor of trans rights, but we can't, because if we do, then, oh no, cis men will come and, under the auspices of being trans, will hurt you. Like, I get it. I understand the concern of being assaulted. I totes understand. But stopping trans people from being allowed in bathrooms that make them feel comfortable isn't going to stop a cis man from assaulting someone. Like, if they want to go into a bathroom and assault someone, they're just going to do it. They're already committing the crime of assault. Do you think that them trespassing in the women's restroom is beyond them? Like, oh, I'm fully on board with, like, assaulting someone, but boy, the door says women, and I don't identify as such, so I'm not gonna go in. It's the weirdest argument. I feel like this was an argument in the past, too. They wouldn't be TERFs, but basically whatever the TERF equivalent would have been back in the day when they weren't gay inclusive, when they weren't like lesbian inclusive, and they were like, oh, we can't let lesbians use the same bathroom as straight women, otherwise they'll assault us. Like, guys, everyone's just here to pee. Will you just knock it off, acting like bathrooms are this like huge issue? Sargon only defends women when it benefits him. Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. KSKD93. It's like these people don't realize that if they want to stop cis men sexually assaulting people, then we address the societal issues around how cis men are raised. Yeah, I agree that would also be part of the thing, right? That's something to do. But even if we address the issues in our society in terms of like RAPE culture and all that stuff, I have to spell it out for YouTube. There are always going to be people who commit terrible crimes, and that sucks, and I get it, and that's awful, but trying to keep people from something that they've already been doing, again, for decades and decades, and trying to get people who look like me to go into the men's restroom, like, imagine I'm out and I look like this. I don't go out in, like, female mode often because I'm very self-conscious about it, and I don't feel like I'm even close to where I want to be in terms of looks. But, like, let's say I'm out and I look like this. Do you not think that me going into the men's bathroom is more of a concern in terms of assault perpetrated on me than it would be for, like, if we just allow trans people to use the bathrooms that they want to use? And then there's some imaginary fear of some man instead deciding to go into the women's bathroom to assault them. Like, what's the issue? Like, it's an imaginary thing. And that's why people are mad about JK's book. Because she can't find real examples of, oh, hey, the Surfs. Hey, Lance, how you doing? because JK can't find real examples of, like, cis men breaking into bathrooms under the auspices of being trans, she has to make one up in her shitty book series that no one reads. That's the problem.
Funny about the tools
Everyone
of
go check.
capitalism.
I can't. I say this even though I'm sure all of you already know. If you haven't seen The Serfs, go check out Lance, The Serfs TV. Click on it and follow. Great content over there.
Appears, in fact, that trans people are not even involved in this conversation. But what it seems to be is a highlighting, perhaps a warning, of the possibility that there will be men who, males, I guess, cis males, which we would normally call men, who might well dress up as women because...
Like, I don't understand in that breath, too. Sargon's like, cis men, which we would normally call men. Like, yeah, but you're using cis because it's a distinction that you need in this conversation, Carl. You're, in the same breath, explaining why the distinction of cis and trans exists. And also decrying that you need to use those words. Like, Sargon, why are you complaining? In that sentence you just used, it helped explain what you meant, but also you're mad. So really it seems what you're mad about is just trans people existing. Which I get it, I'm pretty bummed out about my own existence too. But like, millennial I wanna die memes aside, like, it's a really stupid thing to point out.
The rules will allow it in order to further their own horrific agenda. This is something perhaps
Devious
to
Chilster,
be
thanks for
aware
gifting us up.
of, rather than to be an open condemnation of trans people, if you were to take a charitable reading. And again, that is if what we're being told is actually accurate. But the first review for Troubled Blood describes it as a book whose moral seems to be never trust a man in a dress. What's interesting is the first review is from The Telegraph, and that's where they're getting this from. And The Telegraph is meant to be a conservative publication, or at least not a radical left-wing one. So it's interesting how this is the result. But I read this article, and it's like 4 paragraphs long, and it's a description, and it doesn't actually say this in the article, or at least if it did, I missed it. But this was enough red meat for the LGBT lobby and their activists. And this really did upset a few people on Twitter, as...
Again, yes, because she's clearly trying to fearmonger about cis men using trans identity as some sort of disguise to assault women, which isn't the case.
You might imagine. I mean, one of the replies. Transphobic Silence of the Lambs tropes. How original. Is every film like it? Like, I don't recall seeing a film where a man dresses up as a woman to go and kill other women. Like, I mean, I'm not saying they don't exist.
Silence of the Lambs, Psycho, Sleepaway Camp. I'm sure there are others. Let's see. Movies where a trans woman is the killer. And people draw a distinction. They're like, oh, in Silence of the Lambs, they specifically say that, Buffalo Bill isn't trans. But that gets a little convoluted to me, because the way that they explain that... Oh, Ace Ventura. Thanks, Lance. That's one. Oh, God. Have you guys watched the last, 10 minutes of Ace Ventura lately? It's so yikes. It's so yikes. First of all, Ace Ventura implies that, a mental breakdown caused Einhorn to, become transgender, and then they, humiliate her in front of other people. It's so messed up. It's aged, the most poorly out of so many movies, which is why, I'll watch Ace Ventura 2. I have a hard time watching Ace Ventura 1. And, I'm usually perfectly okay with, problematic elements. I can recognize problematic elements in films from the past and still enjoy the films for what they are. There are movies that are obviously problematic, but nonetheless, you're like, okay, I can take that for what it is and move on, you know? That's fine. And that's, I think, something people on the right don't get. Like, when people on the left call something problematic, it doesn't mean it's canceled. It just means you're like, oh, yikes, and you move on, right? And it's warranting discussion. But either way, Ace Ventura 1 I can't watch. Ace Ventura 2 I can watch. Also, Ace Ventura 2 is funnier anyway. So. Oh, I was talking about Silence of the Lambs. So, in Silence of the Lambs, they say that Buffalo Bill is not trans. However, they also say, Hannibal Lecter's direct quote is something along the lines of, he's not a trans, again, this is verbiage that's used back in the day, he's not a transsexual, although he believes himself to be. And it just made me go, okay, but like, what does that mean, right? Like, unless we got to a point where we like have a machine that can scan your brain, and if we find amongst, you know, all trans women or trans men a specific thing that's like, this means you're trans. If someone with all their being believes themselves to be trans and feels more comfortable representing themselves as a different gender than that assigned at birth, then in what way are they not trans? So that always got to me, and it doesn't really matter to the general public anyway. They're just going to take away like, oh, Buffalo Bill, a weirdo who wants to make a lady suit, you know? So either way, there's been a lot of movies that involve cross-dressing or transgender serial killers or creeps or any sort of thing. It's a trope. It's a whole trope. I'm sure there's a TV tropes page. TV tropes, sleepaway camp. Let's actually look at, let's look at, if you guys haven't done TV tropes is a great place to take a look at, like, stuff about movies, TV shows, media in general. Let me see if there's a trope page about trans, there we go. Implied with Angela, who was really Peter growing up but was forced to become a girl against the will as a sadistic aunt. Sure, let's go under transgender, I guess. Let me see if there's like a page specifically about... Oh, they might not have a page about trans killers. Interesting. Trans killer trope. Or it might be like the cross-dressing killer trope. Cross-dressing killer trope. There we go. Creepy cross-dressers. This is TV tropes page. A cross-dressing character whose choice of attire is played for weirdness or creepiness, for squick, simply for shock value, or to show that he, and it's virtually always he, is evil or deranged. While the look of the wholesome cross-dresser tends to gloss over the dissonance between genders, this trope often calls attention to it. Often the cross-dresser exaggerates tertiary sexual characteristics without bothering to cover up secondary or primary ones. Makeup as evil is played up to 11. Frequently, the unfortunate implication is that cross-dressing is in itself creepy, but it may simply be one aspect of a character who's generally creepy. And yes, there's a distinction between cross-dressing and being transgender, but when we're talking about the general public at large, they don't see a distinction. It's something that I'd like in the public eye to change, but generally speaking, if like we're talking about someone like Jeremy or Sargon who's talking about like the "it's ma'am" lady, they don't see that person as anything other than a cross-dresser, right? Even though there is a distinction. So it's a whole trope. Let me just see movies involving this trope. Films, live action. 31, Ace Ventura: Pet Detective. Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel. Oh no, that's an Alvin and the Chipmunks, the Squeakquel. Boondock Saints, Beyond the Valley of the Dolls, The Borrower, The Dark Knight. Joker describes, that's a little different because it's the Joker, I would argue, but I get it still falls under the same trope. Death Spa, Death Wish, Dress to Kill. Like there's a whole list, right? Psycho's of course on the list. You get the point.
I'm just saying I haven't seen them, and what I'm trying to say when I say that is they don't seem very common to me. This actually seems to be a fairly new trope, and a fairly...
It's not. It's not a new trope. Psycho Psycho helped cement this trope. Spoilers for Psycho, I guess, if you haven't seen Psycho.
Not relevant, like a fairly, shall we say, sensitive subject. And it's really bizarre how a bunch of people are acting like they're being personally attacked. But this is leading on into a further discussion on, oh, hang on a second. I mean, are we allowed to use the word transvestite, considering it's an anti-trans slur nowadays? Or am I wrong about that? I could be wrong. I feel like I heard that a while back, but I don't remember for sure. Who knows, James? Who knows? Maybe it is. Maybe it's been reclaimed. Maybe how do we
The preferred nomenclature is transgender, in case you're wondering.
consult the hive mind on this? How do we figure that out? I don't know. It's like, but then thankfully the hive mind chimes in. Cruella Scoville, even to a bona fide cross-dresser, I've been friends with a few. The term is still considered pretty tactless. Yeah, but maybe they're reclaiming it. Like, I personally just see it as a descriptive term. I personally don't...
I'm sure you do, Sargon.
I
I imagine you also think the N-word's a descriptive term. You're kind of a shitbag.
If it was insulting, I wouldn't know. But then no one does. Mistress Fox said, if you're still a fan of J.K. Rowling and her work, I ask you, if you were a trans ally, to find better things to read that aren't created by a woman who's actually trying to tear apart my community and turn us into serial killers. I don't give a fuck if you love Harry Potter.
There's nothing funny about
Yes,
the tools of
Sargon. Laugh at the
capitalism.
very real concerns that a giant publisher, probably the most prolific popular children's author in the last few generations, prior to Harry Potter, I can't even think of a children's book series that got as popular as Harry Potter. I'm sure it exists, but I can't think of it. The fact that she's using her platform to scaremonger about trans people and basically poisoning the well to the extent that anytime people see a trans woman, they're going to be like, oh, is that a real trans woman or is it a cis man trying to trick me and murder me? Yeah, that's an issue, Sargon. And I know you know this. Sargon is never as stupid as he lets on. Devious Children with 25 bits. How do we find out? Ask people. Yep. Anyway, what was I saying? Trying to poison the well. Oh, Sargon is rarely as stupid as he acts. Like, don't get me wrong. Sargon's stupid for a number of reasons.
There's
But
nothing
he's
funny about
not
the tools of capitalism.
incapable of recognizing what the issue is in situations like this. Right? He just is ingenuine. He's disingenuous. And he always has been. Like, people on the right, the far right especially, people like Sargon, they will lie to your face. I feel like so many people have this issue, and maybe it's because I grew up with, like, a narcissistic dad who, like, lies to people's faces constantly, so I'm just completely acclimated to the idea that there are people who will just lie to your face and feel nothing, and that it's like breathing to them. So you need to recognize that there are people who will say things just because they think it furthers their argument or because it'll help them in some way with absolutely no regard to the truth, and they won't feel bad about it at all. But like, that's the case, especially with a lot of people on the right. And people need to not only recognize this, but learn to spot it, because it's all over the place. And I don't know how to address this necessarily, because it's a hard topic. Because if you're just going to say they're disingenuous, they're going to disagree because they're lying in the first place. They're going to lie about lying. But what do you do when you have an entire group of people arguing in bad faith who aren't trying to actually come to the truth of the matter, but are just trying to push certain positions? It's difficult, and it's something that people need to learn to spot.
Like, why did you feel so personally attacked? She's not saying, at least from the description that we have, that trans people are going to murder cis women. She's not saying trans people are serial killers.
Again, Sargon. But she is saying, hey, we shouldn't let trans people exist in women's spaces because, ooh, look at that trans person. They don't pass very well. Are they secretly a cis man here to murder you? That's the kind of discord that she is sowing. That's the issue, Sargon.
She's not trying to tear your community apart, at least on the surface of things.
On the surface of things is the important part in that sentence. People do things that on the surface can look benign, but have underlying reasons to exist. This is one of those times.
But
for the same reason that, like, Sargon will often talk about things like, oh, I just care about British identity and culture. Sargon doesn't really care about culture. He cares about his country being full of white people, and he uses culture as a proxy for that discussion because he knows if he's honest about the things he actually wants to say, then people will rightly call him out for it. So what these people do will fight little ideological proxy wars in order to try and further their position without actually having to state what they mean. This happens all the time. Devious Chillster with 25 bits. Sargon, it's a joke at your expense. Wondering why people might feel personally attacked by TERFs like him. I don't know, Sargon. Maybe it's because you're the incarnation of that fly who, no matter what you do or how much you swat it, finds another way, or finds to make love to your ear like a star-crossed lover. Interesting comment.
But again, it's really interesting how you felt personally attacked there. Really makes me think. Really makes me wonder what it is you're actually trying to hide. Because, I mean...
Oh my god. Sargon, so disingenuous. Oh, you don't like J.K. Rowling? Fear-mongering about cis men hiding amongst trans women, thus enlarging the public's already quite large distrust of the trans community? What, are you a murderer? Shut up, Sargon. You know what the issue here is, and you're pushing it further because you also don't like trans people. It's exhausting dealing with these people.
I don't see why, as a trans person, this wouldn't be an interesting thing to read. I mean...
Oh boy! I can't wait to read the new J.K. Rowling book that fear-mongers, and it's going to be a part of the reason a lot of people who view her as a role model decide that I'm suspect because I'm transgender. Yay!
Do you not think there could be interesting trans characters that can intersect with the story? Perhaps...
If it were coming from a competent author that didn't have super, super dicey, yikesy takes on trans people... Sure. And it would probably have to come out in an environment where, like, trans people are already treated as equals and have equal rights. Then yeah, the idea of a serial killer or something disguising themselves as a trans woman or a trans man to enter certain spaces, fine. I don't find that particularly interesting, but at the very least, any idea can be turned into a good book. But books don't come out in a vacuum. They come out in the context of both their authors and the world in which they're published. And those things both point to the very obvious fact that J.K. Rowling is trying to be like, oh, you accept trans women, but have you considered a cis man pretending to be a trans woman? Like, come on. It's friggin' obvious what she's doing.
Saving one of the cis women that this cis male killer was trying to get. You know, like, because they'd be in the same space and he'd recognize, or sorry, she would recognize, let's be politically correct here, that this other person is actually an imposter. Like, you know, it actually speaks to layers within the story, perhaps, but who knows? I mean, like
the idea that Sargon could ever be genuinely interested in a story involving trans characters dealing with their transness in a positive way is hilarious to me. And the fact that he thinks that anyone believes that what he's saying is actually how he feels is really, really depressing, because he's probably right, because there are a lot of stupid people that watch his videos.
So I haven't read it, haven't had the chance, and honestly I'm not interested because it's not my area. But you acting like J.K. Rowling has the power to turn trans people into serial killers.
It's about turning public perception of trans people as a benign group of people just trying to live their lives and gain rights that will allow them to live their lives peacefully and happily, into a discussion of, if we give them rights, then secretly sexual assailants will use that to harm women. That's the problem, Sargon. You obviously know this. The obtuseness, it is exhausting, and I hate it.
Is rather amusing, don't you think? What happened to art as being a method of exploring alternate realities? Mistress Fox. What happened to the idea of art creating its own kind of pocket universe?
That's never been the case. No piece of media, whether it be a book or a movie or a story or a game, has ever come out completely divorced from the reality in which it is being published. Ever. And to act as though it's ever been the case is disingenuous.
In which the rules are different, and everyone accepts that the rules are different. I mean, she did the same thing with Harry Potter. Like, no one actually thinks that there's a platform 9 3/4 or whatever it is, and that you go to Hogwarts and whatever it is they do. Like, no one thinks that's real, but within the special rules of the universe, it becomes real in order to tell a story, in order to explore an...
That takes place in a fantasy world. The book that she currently has, which again uses a cis man dressed as a woman as a dog whistle for fear-mongering about trans people, doesn't take place in a fantasy wizard world. It's a true crime novel. True crime. It's supposed to read like a true crime mystery. It's like a Sherlock Holmes story, although that would be giving a lot of credit to what I've heard are pretty bad books. It's a mystery novel set in the real world, right? There's not supposed to be a fantasy element outside of the fact that the story itself is fiction.
Aspect of the human condition. Why are you unable to engage with and explore what I guess we could just describe as a hypothetical scenario? Not that that ever happens, of course, because there's never anything problematic that comes out of this particular community, or cult, as we could describe it.
Sargon calling trans individuals a cult. What's next, Sargon? Oh, black people are a cult. Oh, gay people are a cult. Women are a cult. God, Sargon's the worst.
Genuine question, does this mean we aren't allowed to consume media like Psycho, Silence of the Lambs, Dressed to Kill, The Crying Game? Are we allowed to watch them? And fiction can't turn a demographic into killers any more than a comic could turn me into Spider-Man. Well, hang on there, Scott. I mean, have you tried shooting web out of your wrist and then swinging from building to building?
Again, but things like Psycho and Silence of the Lambs and all the other things that I haven't seen but presumably involve a trans serial killer have led to the public perception of trans women to be profoundly negative, in the sense that they view trans women as secretly men predating upon women. Tetsuyo Dragneel with some bits. For children's book authors with inclusivity, I recommend Rick Riordan series. He originally made Percy Jackson for his son who's dyslexic and wanted to make a story with dyslexic main characters. In the sequel series, he has a very good and inclusive LGBT plus characters. He also has a publishing studio called Rick Riordan Presents, where he has other authors explore their own cultural myths like Korean, Mexican, Hindu, Cuban. Oh, that's cool. DM Trey, the two genders, white and cult.
You don't know. You don't know. Mistress Fox says, oh no, you already know my answer. Don't waste my fucking time. So the answer is, I mean, I don't know actually. I take it the answer is no. J.K. Rowling, her opinion is that women have a biological essence to them. That's fine. That's a normal opinion. That's the common sense opinion. That's what most people think. Most people are not radical activists. And she has written a book that is about the idea that, look, if we allow men to be able to just enter into women's spaces by merely making themselves look like women, or at least not ostensibly making themselves look like women, then this could be an interesting vector for a fantasy novel.
It's not a fantasy novel. It's a crime novel that takes place in the real world. Stop misrepresenting what's going on. She's not saying, oh, again, Sargon. You just characterized and explained exactly what's happening. She's using it as a dog whistle to fearmonger about trans people in cis spaces. What do you not... I can't say what do you not understand. He understands. He just doesn't like trans people and wants to further this ridiculous talking point.
At the very least, but that you can easily read this as an implication because of our activism that, look, maybe this is actually a concern for women who might find themselves in spaces with predatory men who are merely pretending to be trans. I mean, that actually...
Sargon, point to me times this has actually happened in the entire history of trans people using their preferred bathrooms, which was not an issue until Republicans lost the culture war on gay rights. So they gotta find another tentpole issue to try and get people on their side. Oh, trans people make people uncomfortable? Time to talk about bathrooms as if it was ever an issue. It isn't.
Really does seem like a legitimate concern for women to have. And I mean, I know I'm supposed to be like the world's greatest misogynist or anything, but I can't help but think, well, yeah, I mean, that's an issue you're going to have to face because that's definitely going to come up if it has not already come up. And
Sargon, you know it hasn't come up because if it had, you would have been the first person to make 50 videos about it.
know that there are lots of cases where, not necessarily for murder, but for rape, this sort of thing has come up. And so...
When Sargon?
It is legitimate. It is an...
If it were an issue, you would have, again, brought up real-world things, but you didn't, because it's not.
Aspect of reality that has to be engaged with, and freaking out about...
Am I sure Sargon isn't stupid? Yes, I'm sure. Stop letting these people trick you into thinking they are stupid. They're not. They're just evil. There's a difference, and it's a distinction that matters. They are being intentionally obtuse. They fully understand what we are saying when we say, this is problematic and it's going to lead to people believing that trans women are predators. It's not that they don't recognize that, it's that they like that.
About it, where is it? Yeah, freaking out about it and suggesting that like there's just nothing, no complications, no issues, nothing further to talk about, and no fiction can be written about the thing, nothing can be explored any further. This aspect of reality is shining and perfect and flawless is just delusion. It's just you pretending that one thing is the case as you have declared it, and it will always be this way, and it will never change. And reality can go hang because anyone who's trying to talk about this other aspect that might be a negative aspect of what you believe is a bad person. And this doesn't make J.K. Rowling a bad person.
It's part of what makes her a bad person.
And this is why I feel the need to make videos about this. I think this is genuinely a pathology that a cult would have. This is the kind of cult thinking where all...
Advocating for people not viewing you as predatory for just living your life as a cult. Way to not dilute a word, Sargon.
All evil is outside of your in-group, and your in-group is perfect and flawless, and you ostracize anyone who might have any kind of criticisms. I mean, I would have called J.K. Rowling a trans ally if the conversation would be...
That kind of illustrates how little you understand trans issues, Sargon, so maybe stop talking about them, because you don't know what you're talking about.
...being held in those terms. And so to treat her as if she is literally trying to turn you into serial killers is...
Oh my god, taking the most literal reading. Sargon, when she says turning my group into serial killers, she's talking about public perception, and I know you have the reading comprehension to know that. I know you do. So stop with the disingenuous BS. Like... It's just frustrating dealing with these people and constantly ceding ground to their bullshittery, and then a huge portion of the general public is too stupid or too oblivious to recognize what these people are doing. It's incredibly frustrating.
It's nothing short of ridiculous. Anyway, folks, remember, trans women are women. Diversity is our strength. Islam is a religion of peace. And you are duty-bound.
He puts out merch that's sarcastic. Just so we can be like, see, I'm putting out something that says trans women are women. When really, he obviously doesn't mean that. it's sarcastic.
To believe these
For
things.
those who don't know, if your opinion of Sargon couldn't get any lower, I hope I've bottomed it out for you today with this.
If you want to remain inside the intersectional cult, which is why you need to get our Chuds. If you don't remain in that intersectional cult...
What's the V stand for? Red V meaning. V for Vendetta. I don't know anything about that, but it might not even necessarily be related. I don't know. Anyway.
People might start thinking all kinds of things about you. You might start thinking about...
Oh, it's from 1984. I didn't have to read 1984 in high school or reread Brave New World, so I actually haven't read it. What's the big V mean in... Oh, someone has a Wikipedia page. Cool. INGSOC, English Socialism, is the political ideology of the totalitarian government of Oceania in the novel 1984. So Sargon is being like, the totalitarian government says trans women are women. Gotcha. He's being a little shit, as always.
Things that aren't politically correct, and that would be terrible. So the party is going to enforce this regime on you. So if you'd like to support our channel, you can check out the merch store.
Absolutely ridiculous. YouTube, what are you doing? Why is this channel still up? Can we get this asshole off the platform already? I would really love to not ever have to cover him again. He's the worst. It's time to move on, folks. So I guess Tate, remember the other day, it was a couple weeks ago, Tate made a whole advertisement video where he's like, ooh, I'm buying a $500,000 car, guys. And then we never saw that car actually show up to his house or anything. Now he's at a dealership looking at another car. No, this is a completely different car.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Dude Spanking Dude says, when I tried to explain to my dad that Trump is trying to take away trans people's rights, he says it's not going to pass and that he's going to leave me enough money to sustain myself. He thinks that if Biden wins, he's going to give everything for free. Your dad's an idiot. At a dealership, LOL. Yeah. Basically, I think he's just going to do a test drive. But I don't know. Maybe he'll actually buy this car. But yeah, this is a different car than the one he claimed to buy the other week. When he's like, I just bought a $500,000 car. Okay, so you're buying another one this week? Okay. I still don't believe. And again, we've looked this up before. Tate. Kickboxer. What's his name? Andrew Tate. I always forget. Andrew Tate net worth. Andrew Tate net worth. Andrew Tate is an American-British kickboxer who has a net worth of $1 million. Andrew Tate was born in Chicago. So this says he has $1 million, but I've seen estimates between 1 and 6 million. So last week he's saying he bought a $500,000 car, and this week he's looking at yet another incredibly expensive sports car. So if his net worth is actually $6 million, and I'll be, I'll be generous and say that the highest estimate is correct. $6 million, and he's consistently buying this stuff, then he'd be broke. Except I don't think he's actually buying this stuff. I think he films a video buying stuff online, which he did. He didn't show us him actually ordering the thing. He just showed him filling out a form to buy a $500,000 car. And here, he might take a test drive, but I don't think he's actually going to buy the car. Maybe he will. I don't know how expensive this car is, but if he was actually going through his money at the rate he claims in his videos, then he'd be broke, or he will be broke very soon. Reminder that these videos are just an advertisement for his awful website. His website, which he shills to men, like, oh, you want to be a G like me? You should give me a bunch of money and I'll tell you how to be rich. He's not as rich as he lets on. Which is why he lives in like an Eastern European country, by the way, so he can buy a bigger McMansion because the dollars he have go further there. I forget where he lives. It's like, it's some Eastern European country. I don't remember which one. Let me look. Let me see if it says. I know there was one video about Biden that it was relevant because he was saying that Biden was interfering in the government or something where he lives and trying to promote legalization of gay marriage, which I guess Tate's against. Let me see if I can find it. It'll be the one with Joe Biden in the thumbnail. Or I can just Control F. Biden. There we go. Joe Biden encouraging gay marriage in Romania. I assume promoting the legalization. So Tate lives in Romania because spending power is, how do I put this? A dollar goes further in Romania than it does in the US or the UK, so we can buy stuff for cheaper. So he's rich, but he's not rich. You know what I mean? He was a successful kickboxer. He's basically a pimp to a bunch of women who do online stuff for him. But other than that, he's not like $100 millionaire. He probably has between $1 and $6 million, so he's doing well for himself. I assume if he is actually reasonable with his money, he will continue to increase his wealth over time. Because after a certain point, it's easy to make money. That's kind of how you win capitalism, is get enough that the money makes more money on its own. But nonetheless, he's not as rich as he tries to come off in these videos. It's a scam to get men who watch these videos to think that if they give him money, they'll be as successful as him.
So, you went and did it. You just bought a Bugatti Chiron. You know how I feel?
And again, just like the video, like a week or two ago, where he says he bought the $500,000 car, we don't actually see him make the purchase. We just saw some footage of him in a dealership, which, hey, I'm sure Tate owns a couple really nice cars. I think we've seen him in some videos. I don't know if he owns outright or if he leases them. I have no idea. And frankly, it'd be none of my business if he wasn't such a douchebag who flaunted his wealth constantly. But he rocks up in a pretty nice car. He can get a test drive, I'd imagine. We didn't even see him do a test drive, actually. We saw him go into the dealership and have them show him the interior of the car. Not a super high bar to be able to do that. I don't know what dealerships, I don't know what their bar is for letting people to come in and look at the cars. I'd imagine certain luxury brands might do some sort of check on you just to make sure you're not wasting their time. But nonetheless, Tate, we did not see buy that car. I have no reason to believe he actually bought it. Because even if he did, and here's the thing, even if he did, he would be an idiot. Because he just bought a $500,000 car last week, according to him, according to previous videos. And before that car even gets to him, he's supposedly buying this other sports car. I don't even know what a Bugatti costs. I'm going to spell this completely wrong.
Funny about the tools of capitalism.
Bugatti car. 2011 whatever. Price. Let's say 2020 because he was looking at a new car.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Got some bit messages, hold on. Wind Chanter with a bit. But if I just work hard and work for the capital owners my whole life, they'll take care of me, I'm positive. Devious Chilster with 25 bits. I mean, are we sure any of those cars he drives are his? Tate totally seems like the guy who'd threaten his friends at gunpoint to let him use their cars for his videos to look cooler. I think he's rich enough that at minimum he's either renting or leasing the vehicles that he has. Starting at $3 million. No, Tate did not buy this $3 million car. He didn't. He did not. This one starts at $1 million. This one starts at $500,000. But I think the one he was looking at looks a little closer to this one. Here's a 2019 even. I don't think Tate bought this car either. Shockingly enough.
Tell me.
I don't feel like I've made it or like, yes, it's done or nothing. Do you know how I feel? I feel super motivated. Like, it's just begun.
There's nothing funny about the
You know what I'm
tools
saying?
of
I'm
capitalism.
33, bro. When I was 25, I
Isn't $3 million like his entire net worth? It's half. The thing said his net worth was $6 million. And again, I'm not saying those things can't be wrong, but I think it's at least a place to start. And again, considering he lives in like Romania, it seems to me he's trying to stretch his money as much as possible. He has roommates that are with him constantly. I feel like if I had that much money, I wouldn't have roommates. Why would I have roommates if I had that much money? So I think him and some other friends who probably are relatively well off bought a McMansion in Romania so they can act like they're ballers. They were renting or leasing some expensive sports cars so they can live this fakey rich life that they think they should have, even though they don't have the money to sustain it in actuality, in the real world.
I was fucking broke. When I was 22, I didn't even have a car. I'm 33, bro. I just bought a fucking Bugatti cash. I bought this super fast 3 days ago, cash. 12.
So this looks like a Lamborghini or something, which he probably rented. I think he rented it.
Supercars. Like,
One hypercar now.
yeah, but like people buy cars like, oh, I've got a Bugatti. It's just begun. That's nothing. I've got plenty of money left. I've got plenty of ideas.
I feel like he's speeding. I'm bad at estimates, but I feel like on a city street, he's going too fast if you look at the window and how fast stuff's going by.
Plenty of work ethic. My blood's still on fire.
Yeah, there's no chance he bought that with cash. Even if he wanted to, I very much doubt a Bugatti dealership is gonna, like, handle over $1 million in cash for a transaction. Zero chance a reputable business is gonna do that. Like, they're gonna be like, I mean, I appreciate that, but can you get us, like, a certified check or something? Like, no store on the planet wants to hold on to that much liquid cash. They just wouldn't do it. Because what if they get robbed? I don't know. Like, you're not going to hold on to $1 million in cash.
I'm buying a yacht. 50 mil. Easy. What's 3 mil?
Weird that we haven't seen your yacht, Tate. It's almost like you can't afford a yacht. You're rent a sports car or lease a sports car rich. You're not own and maintain a yacht rich. I think that's a good way to distinguish the kind of rich Tate is. And that's the thing. Tate, even though he's not as rich as he claims, is richer than I'll ever be in my entire life. And that's fine. I'm not someone who pursues wealth in that way. As long as I have a comfortable place to live and I'm able to, like, feed myself and pay my bills, I'm happy. I don't need this constant idea of, like, climbing and building wealth. But Tate, even though he's probably pretty darn rich, he has enough money where his money's making money for him. I don't think he has a day job or anything. He's not happy with it. He has to continue to act and stretch his money to act as though he's richer than he already is, which is already obscenely rich. It's very strange.
Can I say something real quick?
Yeah.
So if you get approved for a loan for a car from a bank, they give you basically a blank check. And as long as it's within the amount that you're approved for, you go to the dealership and you say,
There's nothing
I
funny
am
about the
buying
tools
this
of
car with
capitalism.
cash. And when you do that, when you make a deal with the dealership about what the price is, you take out the blank check and you fill it out. Now that is the bank paying in cash for your car.
And then you owe the bank.
And then you owe the bank.
Yeah.
So technically, if he had a blank check from a bank, he could say, oh, I'm paying it in cash. But it's still a loan.
Thrash me with 20 bits. Tate makes me think of Matthew Lesko, but with a leather jacket and a bad boy, and a bad boy. I don't know who Matt Lesko is. Let me look.
Are my hands cold?
Not really. Oh, yeah, the question mark guy. I remember that guy. Yeah, Tate's a lot like this guy, but instead of wearing a question mark suit, he, you know, puts on the airs of like a billionaire to act like he has all the money. Tate makes me think of oh, wait, no, I already read that. Sorry. Thank you to Island Scrub J for following. Welcome to the stream. He looks like the Riddler. Yeah, I'm a little surprised he never got sued by DC Comics. It's very Riddler-y.
I thought they meant that Tate looked like the Riddler, but he really looks like, oh god, who's the bald dude from...
Lex Luthor?
Lex Luthor. I know things.
Tate would be like Lex Luthor's, oh boy, like spoiled nephew who doesn't know how to handle money, and he'd be like, he wouldn't be a Superman villain. He'd be like a Superboy villain, or like a villain of Crypto the Superdog. Like he'd be a villain for someone in the superhero Superman family, but he's not good enough to actually fight Superman.
3.3 plus tax. What, I mean, it's chump change.
It is.
Anybody should have a Bugatti. It shouldn't even be an achievement. I don't even feel like I've achieved anything. These people out here who can't buy a Bugatti, you need to look in the mirror, man. It's not even a fucking thing. I've just begun. Wait till you see where I am in a year from now. Year at a time, our life changes. 1 year. None of this 5-year plan shit. 1 year. 1 year ago, we had 2 supercars.
Capitalism.
Devious Jilster of 25 bits. Tate looks like Vin Diesel's jerkier, less successful younger brother who asks for money every once in a while to buy a Bugatti cash.
We had 2 supercars a year ago, bro.
Yep.
We had the Aston and the Lambo. Now I've got the 720S, the 812 Superfast, the 911 992, M5 fully custom, the F63 AMG, the Chiron.
Wasting money on that many cars would be a really dumb waste of money unless you literally have billions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like, the maintenance on those cars alone is going to be incredibly expensive, even if they just sit in a garage somewhere, like a temperature-controlled garage, which you should have if you're spending this much money. But, like, no way. I don't believe Tate for even a second. Kinetic Kirby 92, thank you for following.
I freaking love my car, and it is amazing and has, like, some cool features, and it's fully electric, and I didn't spend nearly as much as these cars. Like, I didn't even spend, like, a tenth.
Yeah.
And I love my car. So,
X6M.
I guess I don't understand the point.
I can't even remember the cars we have. I literally can't even remember. We bought cars for that rally that got crushed. We lost cars. And we're still sitting on so much money in the bank, bro. Buying the Bugatti. All it's done is piss me off. I need more money.
Well, we've had worse days.
Want to make money online? Read description. Oh boy, it's almost like this whole video was an ad for insecure men in order to get them to want to fill the void in their lives with wealth like Tate has.
That's why it was so short. It's literally an ad.
Yeah, oh yeah, I know. I'm just saying.
Another ad.
There's nothing funny about
God,
the
he's
tools of
trash.
capitalism.
Freaking out 99, I bought my car at a yard sale and it was a better investment. The Stellar Sea Cow. What is his accent even? I can't tell if he is Shav or American or an American trying to be a Shav. He's from the UK and he's lived in the UK and the US and now he lives in Romania.
He's British and he's trying very, very, very hard not to sound British. He wants to sound American.
Yeah. Part of his gross persona. This is another thing where I think he just rented this car.
Yeah.
Like
or borrowed it from a friend so that he could do the donuts and
Sure,
shit.
but you could rent a car like this and say, like, hey, we're filming a commercial with it and I need to do donuts. And they'd let you do that provided you bought, like, insurance and stuff. Like, I don't think that's out of the question. Which I think is why they're doing it out here in the middle of nowhere. this is probably the safest place you could possibly do donuts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Oh, I couldn't imagine doing that to a car.
yeah.
I love my car.
The Stellar Sea Cow, homie said bruv. That's gonna make you sound like you sell loosely outside the Tesco. I have no idea what that means. Tate is a depressing individual. T8 MVP.
If that was actually his car, why would he put the license plate on there?
What do you mean?
Like, he was showing the license plate.
It is. It's Tate MVP.
Yeah.
It's Tate. It's a vanity plate.
Yeah, but why would you ever show what your license plate was on the internet if
I don't
it was
know.
actually your car? And it doesn't look like a true license plate.
It doesn't.
It looks like he just stuck that on
It does. It looks like it's a magnet or something. I don't know. I guess I don't know what Romanian license plates look like.
I'll send a picture of that to my the person in my cohort that is actually Romanian. Like, Anna Maria, is this for real?
That one definitely looks different. Like, it has a thing on the side. See? It has like a Romanian flag. Where did it go? I don't know.
And it's black background.
Yeah. I don't know. Some places might have specific rules for that, though, where if you have a certain car, you might be able to color coordinate. I don't know. Send it to the Romanian person that you know.
Okay.
Wind Chanter, I think Tate is compensating for something. No, you don't say. Oops, didn't mean to do that. What else can we watch? We're done with Tate for now. Okay, I've been saying I'll watch this for a while, so I guess I can do this. I don't know if we'll watch the whole thing because it's pretty long. I doubt we will. And also, I'm a white person, so I don't like to talk on, like, how do I put this? I will advocate as an ally the best I can in, like, discussions of, like, race and stuff like that. But, like, I'm pretty sure this is, like, two African-American individuals having a discussion, and I'm not going to come in and be like, I'm a white person, let me explain the right answer. So I'm not going to do that. So we can watch a little bit, but I doubt I'm going to have a lot to say about it.
Guys, I'm Michael.
I'm Evan.
Thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Middle Ground.
After the episode, please stick around for a word from and
Glad
representation of something important.
the episode.
Obama was a representation of something important.
Obama didn't do anything but an abomination to us, to this whole nation.
Yo,
Did I see the crazy Christian Disney World rant, or no, you got a link?
What's the biggest misconception black liberals have about you?
That we are self-hating, we hate our mom, we hate our dad, we don't know history.
We're out of touch, is that we don't have any real world experiences.
We don't really know what we're doing.
What is a misconception black conservative people have about you?
Probably that I have no moral character.
I believe in chaos and anarchy.
And you don't?
No, I believe in the rule of law. I literally cannot comprehend the notion of anyone being American and black and having conservative views.
When you're online behind the screen, behind the black mirror, you can say pretty much whatever you want, do whatever you want, but when you're right here, you gotta be a little bit more human.
I'm a business consultant. I was born and raised in Pennsylvania, born into and raised in a conservative household, and I'm still a conservative.
My name is Xavier. I'm born and raised Los Angeles. I'm liberal.
Hi, I'm Elisa. I'm definitely as far left as one can walk.
I'm Anthony Logan. I'm from Virginia originally. Grew up in a socially conservative household, but very politically liberal. I'm conservative now, and I'm looking forward to hearing.
Interesting that there's 3 conservatives and 2 liberals. Why?
All
Why
you
didn't
guys
they have
are
an
point of
equal
view.
amount?
My
That's
name
weird.
is Lady Kate Sparelle. I am a conservative Republican.
All right, can I get my black liberals on the left and my black conservatives on the right?
Say that again.
Liberals on the left, conservatives to the right.
Okay.
If you agree with the prompt, you'll walk forward. If not, you'll stay back. People need to get over slavery.
Oh. Yeah, nope, not watching this. Because I'm certainly not gonna, like, white person splain this shit. Anyway, what else can we watch?
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
The Stellar Sea Cow, I have thoughts. I'm a half-black woman who was very liberal, like borderline socialist, and was raised in an upper-middle-class black atheist socialist household, like as in Clarence Thomas used to live down the road from us. I don't know what else to watch. Fine, here's Elliot Hull saying, it's better for women to make babies first. This is gonna be yikes.
Women can build their careers and chase money anytime in their life that they so choose. But there's only a small window of opportunity for making babies. Unfortunately, in this time of diabolical disorientation, this truth has been very much confused. So today I got a great question for one of my King Transformation students who goes on to say, yo, Elliot, I had a question on your thoughts regarding women and careers. In one of your live sessions, you brought up a great point about women getting careers after children. I also recall you mentioning that the mothers need to be with their children during the early rearing phases of a child's growth. As a future husband and father, I was wondering at what age would a child outgrow his mother and transition into the tutelage of his father? I'm asking for 2 reasons. Number 1, I want my
Hey, how about you both parent all the time because you're the kid's parents? What is wrong with you? And the implication that, like, women need to have children before they do anything else. No. A lot of women don't even want to have kids, and that's fine. And if someone wants to, like, have a kid while they're working, that's fine too, provided that they can afford childcare or have someone in their life who can watch the kid for them while they're at work. Like, what?
Future wife to quit her career when she has children, but also give her hope in the returning once our children reach a certain age. Number 2, I want to prepare myself mentally, physically, and spiritually for when a man needs to step into the life of his child more than he did during the child rearing years. So that's a really good question, bro. And I responded to your question via email, but I want to make this video because I think this is a question that many men may not have even considered, many women may have not considered, and would be good for a lot of other people to hear. Now, let me go back to my original point when opening this video, in that women have a small window of opportunity to do that which they have been made to do. Men and women have our unique gifts, certain things that only we can do. There are certain things that only men can do. Women...
Like what? Like what? Ejaculate? Okay, great. Cool. Good for you.
Capitalism.
Stellar Sea Cow with 5 bits. Let's see, my parents are divorced and my dad was the one with custody, and my dad didn't let me play with baby dolls or kitchen sets. We had babies, though, because Barbie had all the cool jobs. Sexism disguised as gifts. Does he not have a shirt? Yeah, I am worried. He never seems to wear one. Maybe he is in need. He spent all his money getting that mall sword framed, and now he can't afford a shirt.
No matter how hard they try, how much they aspire, or how many laws are created, or how much money is thrown at it, will never be the type of athlete, will never have the physical strength, will never have the prowess physically that a man does, right? That's why you got situations like the WNBA where these women are asking for equal pay, but they don't do the things that the real NBA.
Oh, God. Tate, it doesn't matter. They're all performing under the WWE label. They should be paid the same. I understand differentiation in terms of, like, your headliners are probably going to get paid more than, like, your lower B, C tier performers. I understand that. But, like, if we're talking about amongst between men and women who are like the same B and C whatever tier, they should get paid the same. Why wouldn't they be?
NBA does.
Oh, did he say WNBA? Same thing applies. Although comes into question, like, viewership and how much money gets brought into the league. I understand the thought behind that, but I don't know. It seems to me that there's already enough of a difference in that male NBA stars will tend to get more sponsorship deals, so I don't see why it would not. I don't see the issue if they took some of the pay that they give to the NBA because of the higher ratings and apply it to the WNBA, if not as pay, then as perhaps, like, marketing to try and get more people to watch it. I don't know. Dudes spanking dudes. This is Elliot, not Tate. Yes, I know, Hannah. It's like they're the same person. I don't know anything about sports, though, so I'm not really going to talk about sports.
He wants to watch a bunch of women dribbling around on a smaller ball in a lower hoop. Because when
oh, my God. Oh, God, I almost called him Tate.
Women aren't designed to dominate in that particular field. Men are. Things that require physical strength, providing, protecting, presiding, preparing. These are things that men are designed to do. Women are designed to be pregnant. That is...
No. Evolutionarily speaking, women of our species, cis women, indeed, are the ones that become pregnant. That does not mean that sociologically, as human beings, that is their primary purpose. Because we don't operate on, like, the rule of nature. If we did, we wouldn't have houses and electronics and pencils and lotion and any random thing that humans have invented that we could talk about. In society, we do not order our society by what nature dictates. If we did, it would be real bad, because nature, unfortunately, has a way of creating some really messed up situations. In nature, assault, theft, murder are common occurrences in pretty much every social species. In any species, I should say, not social species. That doesn't mean we give people certain roles in society and be like, well, that person assaulted someone, but hey, it happens in nature, so that's fine. Just because women happen to be the child bearers in terms of, like, sexual dimorphism within our species doesn't mean that as a society we should say that that is women's primary role and they should be relegated to that. Even relegated temporarily in terms of, like, well, you're of childbearing age, you better have a kid. Because every individual, and within our society, we value individual liberty. And what I mean by that isn't like the right-wing rah-rah, it means nothing, I just get to wave a flag thing. I'm talking about actual liberal principles of being able to choose what you want for yourself in your own life. And nature, just the fact that women happen to be the people in our species who get pregnant doesn't mean that is their primary purpose in society. Women, if they want to have a kid, that's awesome. Go do that. That's cool. But that doesn't mean everyone has to or should be coerced into taking up such a role. Thrash Mia with 20 bits. Women's soccer players should be paid more. They don't have that someone looked at me weird, time to roll across the field pretending to be in pain BS.
Their gift. That is their unique ability that no matter what a man does, he can't do. So for us to fulfill our purpose as men and women, we got to do what we've been designed to do. Now, I'm not saying everybody needs to.
Walker of the Waste, thank you for subscribing with Twitch Prime. And thank you for saying nice things about me.
Fulfill these obligations. There are people who lay outside the norm, and they're very few and far between in terms of those who would naturally fall outside the norm. But most women will be most happy when they fulfill their gift and their obligation to make babies. Now, like I said,
oh God. Now, I haven't done a survey of like cis women who are fertile in order to be able to determine what most women would find, I don't know, fulfilling if childbearing is something they want primarily. I'm sure there are some women who do. It might even be the majority of women. I'd have no way of knowing. But saying that means nothing to the individual. It's less than worthless because it actively creates a situation where people who don't want that are treated as weird or treated like they're not fulfilling their role. Like, be descriptive, not prescriptive. If it happens that within society, women, a majority of women, and again, I don't have statistics in front of me or anything because it doesn't really matter. If a majority of women felt like, I want to have a kid or kids, and that is my primary goal, that would be fine. People are allowed to pursue whatever goals they want as long as they don't hurt other people. That wouldn't change the fact that saying prescriptively to women, this is your role in society, is bad. It would be like me going to men and being like, by the way, your role is to go to war for us and kill each other. Like, that's ridiculous. That's sexist. That's stupid, backwards thinking. And it's harmful to individuals who don't want to do those things. So why say it? It doesn't matter. Some people want to have kids. Some people don't. Period. And by the way, if someone is pregnant, presumably there's a second person in the equation, and that baby is just as much theirs. I am so sick of this idea that, like, oh, it's women's job to nurture the children. How about you parent, you lazy piece of crap? Like, that kid is just as much yours as it is the mother's. Parent the child. I am so tired of this view that it's like, well, that's her job. I'm gonna go ahead and be hands off and not do anything. I'll just pay for food, and then you take care of the kid. I'm not dealing with it. No. No. If that's how you feel you're going to parent your kid, don't be a parent. I had a parent like that, and they are an awful person.
That's right.
If that's how you feel about kids, you shouldn't have kids. Thank you to Black Rabbit of Inley for following. Welcome to the stream.
I said, we live in a time of diabolical disorientation, so women have been convinced that there's something oppressive about making babies. There's something archaic about being a wife.
There's nothing oppressive about having children. Well, seriously though, if you want to have children, there's nothing inherently oppressive about it other than any other responsibility you might take on. Forcing someone into a role that they don't want, forcing someone to have children or coercing them into doing so because you believe it's their natural role, that is wrong, and that is forcing something on someone. That's oppressive. That's the word I was thinking of because that's the one he used. Sorry. Black Rabbit of Inley, thank you for subscribing.
Being a mother, being a homemaker, when in reality, it's completely backwards. Being a wife, being a mother, being a homemaker is the most important thing in a freaking society. Women want to change society from the outside, not realizing that when they do their job, they change society from the inside.
Okay, everyone can change. Everyone. This is a stupid argument. Everyone. Let me get my I don't have a Joker thing. I need to get like a Joker thing I can put up because this comes up so happen. We live in a society. We all live in society and we're all taking part in it. And you can take part in it as a mother, as a father, as an employee, as a politician, as an advocate. There are a myriad of ways you can advocate for changes in the world. Saying that any one way of advocating for change is the correct way is incredibly reductionist. Everyone can help society, and while some people can help society by parenting their children, men or women, other people can help society by being politicians or being lobbyists, and I don't mean lobbyists like corporate lobbyists. I'm talking about like interest groups that actually advocate for good things, like, I don't know, the ACLU or something. It's just ridiculous to be like, you have uterus that is fruitful, therefore that is your role. It's backwards thinking. You don't get to dictate that to other people. The Stellar Sea Cow. People would think that my mom's second husband would have the mentality slowly because he's a Muslim man from Senegal, but no, man, when he was home with my sister when she was a baby, he would be cooking and cleaning in a dashiki with her strapped to his back. I'm always happy I had a good male influence in my life when it came to childcare. Well, that's good. I think things have gotten better in society in terms of, like, society recognizing that, like, fathers are not babysitters when they're watching their kids. They're the parent. They're one of the parents. And they should be interacting with the children as much as the mother. Like, you should both interact with your children and love them and care for them, play with them, speak to them, teach them. This is not something that is gendered. This is something that you should be doing as a parent. And if you are not willing to do those things and you think that that should be pushed off to your spouse because of their gender, you should not have a child, let alone children. Thank you to, did I miss another thing? Skyblime, thank you for following.
Right? You want to change the world, you start by being a good mother, making babies.
No. If that's what someone wants to do with their life, yeah, great. But don't prescribe that to 50% of the population and tell them that that's what you need to do. It's ridiculous.
Supporting those babies into growing up into being resourceful, solid, upstanding citizens in the society. But I'm a misogynist if I say shit like that.
Yeah, you are. Like, don't say that sarcastically. You literally are, bro.
All you gotta do is look at the world and realize that I'm right. In this world where most children are
Devious Children with 100 bits. My stream boss. I'm assuming that means you're the new stream boss. Nice.
Cast off to daycare centers and women are out there chasing careers or not having babies at all or wait.
Oh my god. Anyone who, like, talks smack about daycare is ridiculous. Throughout human society, people have had their children watched by other people. Have you never heard the phrase, it takes a village to raise a child? Like, throughout human history, collectively taking care of children has been a thing. In fact, the idea of, like, the nuclear family and never having anyone else watch the kids on a regular basis is outside of the norm for human history. And I'm not telling you prescriptively that because something in human history has been the case, it should be the case. But what I am trying to illustrate, it is not some new thing. People have taken care of other people's children all throughout history, whether it's family or friends or other people, it's fine. Kids have been raised in environments where other people have dealt with them forever. It's fine.
Waiting till their eggs are practically rotten to try to make a baby in a petri dish.
Why do all of these people have words they say that are just repugnant? I don't know.
Children are suffering, right? They say that 75% of men that are in prison systems come from single mother homes.
Yeah, a lot of that comes from the drug war, something that you don't have a problem with because you're a right-winger. Like the drug war and the overpolicing of inner cities, which disproportionately have a large minority population. Yeah, that's to blame in that, bro. I need to stop calling him bro. Anyway, you get the idea.
Right? Women are on more antidepressants and have more psychological problems since the 1960s.
Depression is higher across the board. It's due to record high income inequality and a lack of assurance about the future due to things like climate change, said income inequality, political systems that are not helping the majority of people, all sorts of stuff.
When all this quote-unquote liberation started happening with birth controls and abortion, than ever before. Women are not happy trying to compete with men in the workforce because they're giving away.
No one is happy in the workforce because almost no one is being paid fairly for their work. Men and women. Stellar Sea Cow, before the 60s, instead of getting antidepressants if you were depressed, your husband would just get you lobotomized. True.
Best years of their life to work for some corporation, to go climb some ladder, to go work for some man. It's interesting, right? Because to be a wife and to work for your husband is again seen as oppressive in a world that hates the family, hates patriarchy.
Oh my God, no one hates the idea of family. People do hate the idea of patriarchy, rightfully so, because it's messed up. And just because you have a penis doesn't mean you get to be in charge.
Hates the father's rule, hates men, diabolical disorientation. They tell him that it's liberating to go out there and work for the man rather than your man. So it's all backwards, it's square, it's messed up.
Yeah, it's liberating to have your own money and not have to force yourself to deal with an abusive husband because he has all the power and all the money. Correct.
But the issue is here now that young women are convinced that they need to spend their most fertile, most feminine years chasing the...
Hear that? Women who are infertile? You aren't even women. This guy and J.K. Rowling, I think, would get along pretty well.
Agreed.
They both define women by their genitalia.
He's building a career, chasing money, and foregoing childbirth, instead taking hormones, right? Birth control pills that are well known to create all kinds of physiological havoc, and open their womb, open their legs, spread their pea sleeve for every single man that comes around for entertainment, right?
Did he just use the phrase pea sleeve? Ugh.
Totally destroys, defiles their womb, and doesn't leave room for that which it was designed for, childbearing. And then they get to the age of about 27, 28, mid-30s. When they've done all that, they're all used up, and they want to settle down and beta down some dude, and then start thinking about having children. Meanwhile, at that point, the boat has passed. So your question is about your wife, right? Your future wife.
My wife.
So I want to share a little bit of my perspective, share a little bit of my experience, share a little bit of what I know.
That reference is like 15 years out of date. Wind chanter with 10 bits. I walked into the local state house and showed them my penis, and they said I had to run for office. I feel like you typoed that a little bit. Dr. Gamble with 20 bits. Didn't Adam for Adam Ruins Everything debunk the fertility age claim with women? Oh, he probably did. There's been a lot of episodes of that show.
That's sound knowledge, anthropological proofs.
Those are words. But if you're going to use those words, then you need to provide actual proof and how they relate to the current situation you're prescribing people get into.
Of what I want to share with you. So, when a woman is in her childbearing years, it's best for her to make babies, to be a mother.
Funny about the tools of capitalism.
People really think cis women even have time for sex, says Dude Spanking Dudes. I have no idea what you mean by that.
But after those years, this is the great thing about being a woman that the world doesn't want them to understand. After those years have passed, after you've made the babies you want to make and you've cared for the babies in the way that you want, a woman's body begins to change. Her physiology
I almost called him Tate again. They're both douchebags in very similar ways. So this guy's like Diet Coke Tate. Elliot, what if a woman doesn't want to have kids at all? Baja Blast. Because I'm pretty sure Elliot's transphobic, even though I'm a trans woman. He's not going to see me as a woman. Fine. I'll give him that, even though I disagree. Baja Blast. Cis woman, my girlfriend, doesn't want to have kids. Ever. She's a fourth-year PhD candidate in developmental biology. And that's great. So, like, is it fine as far as Elliot's concerned if she just doesn't want to have a kid? Or has she wasted her life despite the fact that she's going to have a PhD and Elliot's just going to have a YouTube channel where he rants about things with his shirt off?
It begins to change. She actually has more testosterone later on in her life.
Oh, God.
And the reason why is because nature designed things so perfectly. God created the world.
Oh, no. He's bringing religion into it.
World so precisely that when a woman is past her child-rearing years, that she now has an increase in testosterone. Her femininity begins to subside a little bit. Why? So that she's there to support the younger women. A woman in her later age, in her later years, is better suited for the business world. She's better suited to compete. She's better suited to take a hard, even more masculine stance in her life and the people that she loves.
This guy's so gross.
Than she does when she's younger, right? Remember I said diabolical disorientation? We got it flipped backwards, where women are old, past the age of childbearing, and they're trying to, you know, take pills, get shots, and put babies in beakers. Where if it's done the right way in their early ages, they will, instead of trying to compete with a man, Stefan Arnio says, instead of trying to become a man, find a competent man.
Oh my God. Being successful is not trying to be a man. Imagine being so sexist that you don't see the issue with conflating success in areas outside of being a parent, and you immediately think it's masculine. Like, fella, you can be successful in just about any field, whether you're a man or a woman or you're NB or whatever. That's not masculine behavior. That's the problem, is that you define success by your masculinity and vice versa. Stop it. Get some help. Nowhere in the Bible does it say this. Say what? What did he say that he thinks is in the Bible? Oh, the older women thing? Yeah, no, that doesn't say that anywhere in the Bible.
Right? Instead of wasting your womb by spreading your legs with every Tyrone and Chad that comes around,
other people's sexual activity is literally none of your business. So knock it off.
Use those years to work with and support a man that has potential to support you during those most vulnerable times, those most vulnerable years. So let me share my experience with my wife. We got married at age 23, started having children at age 24. By age 35...
That's so ridiculous to me. I'm 26 right now, and I never want to have kids. But even if I did, I cannot imagine having children now, much less like 2 years ago or 3 years ago. I don't even feel like an adult now, and I don't think I ever will. I don't think there is such a thing as like feeling like an adult, but like, I cannot imagine the person I was 3 years ago being responsible enough to take care of a child, and I very much doubt that Elliot is or has been, considering how he thinks about things. It's so crazy to me that people are out here having kids in their early 20s. It's absolutely nuts to me. Those kids are going to be so messed up. How do these terrible people find people willing to breed with them? There's a lot of terrible people, you know?
We've had all of our children who started getting a little bit older. My business had become established, and guess what? She now works in my business. My wife has a higher degree than me. My wife is a more educated woman than me. My woman has contributed 4 beautiful...
Okay, so presumably she got that education either in tandem or prior to her having those kids. Do you see how that flies in the face of what you're saying?
Children to our family that I have been fortunate enough to be able to provide and protect for. But now that she's at the age where the children don't need her so much, she can team up with me, not go work for some dude. Dude.
If you have a family business, it's great if you want to go and work in that business because you're probably going to get a better deal and you'll probably get the benefits of the fruits of your labor because people treat family better than they do employees. So yeah, I agree. Or how about this? We flatten the structure of businesses so people who do their jobs even for just some random company, how about it's no longer a random company for them? How about if you go and work for a place, you get a stake in the company, at least a little bit, and its success becomes your success. That'd be nice, right?
I read your email and I recognize that you're a medical student. So think of it this way, the lucky woman that gets to be with you gets to be provided and protected for while you're out there working, struggling, hustling, doing the manly damn thing. And she, when that time passes, can come and be your office manager. She can come and be your assistant.
The subs are
she
set to
can
Dutch.
Help
That's
market
weird.
And support your business.
There's
That's
no English
the best
option.
way. God made Eve to support Adam, not the other way around.
Again, this is the problem with people who take the Bible literally. The Bible is written in the Bronze Age and earlier, and it was written in such a way to convey the morality of the people at the time. So yeah, the Genesis story of Adam and Eve talks about like Eve being made as a companion for Adam, and that's a problem with taking your ideology from Bronze Age people, right? You're gonna have a lot of backward morality. Instead of actually recognizing that women are human beings and people with just as much agency, free will, and promise as a man, you go, well, the Bible says you're just extra. You're just here for me. And it makes you take 50% of the population and completely discredit them as human beings. It's real bad. And it's so weird to me that Eliot quotes the Bible like this because that same book was used. And I don't think Eliot's a white guy. I don't think he is. I think he's mentioned before that he's like mixed race or whatever, which, yeah, cool. And the same Bible was used by white people for generations, for centuries, to justify like the enslavement of certain people. Like, there's a reason we don't take our morality, or we shouldn't take our morality literally from the Bible, because a lot of it's really, really awful. And the same thing applied to the readings that thought that slavery was fine, as do this idea that women are subservient to men because of Adam and Eve. You gotta stop taking your morality as a literal translation from the Bible. If you read the Bible and you're Christian, you get certain good things out of it, that's good and I'm happy for you. But the second you start using it to be like, oh, this means this person's better than this person, then you've immediately lost the plot. No.
Eve is God's gift to man. Adam is God's gift to the world.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Watch out, world. I got a penis, so I'm literally a gift to the world. The amount of ego necessary for that statement makes my face hurt.
It goes in that.
Yeah, I'm not reading that quote.
That order. Adam, Eve, man, woman. And it's not about putting one above the other or making one better than the other, but recognizing that there's a hierarchy in nature. In every regard, there's a hierarchy in nature. For nature to work out in the greatest, most resourceful, and most beneficial way to everyone, we have to recognize these various hierarchies. We can't ignore them because of our feelings or because of what the media, the schools, feminism, communism, atheism has told us. All that.
Okay, moving on. I'd love to hear him define all of those isms and see what he thinks any of those mean.
Shit is garbage. So moving on. Your second question is about your role as a father during the first few years of the child's life, as well as when do you quote unquote step in as a father. And this is just based on my experience.
The day they're born, you don't it's not like 3 or 4 years in, a switch flicks and you all of a sudden become a father. You're the kid's dad. You need to be there. You need to parent that kid. You need to play with that kid and be with that kid and teach that kid when you have the chance. And I understand that in some households that they have like traditional roles where like there'll be a stay-at-home mom and a dad that goes to work, and that's fine. But when you are home, you're a parent. Parent that kid and be with them and play with them and teach them and love them. Like, you don't get to just be like, well, it's not my job. They're still a baby. That's not my job. No, you get in there. You change those diapers. You do what you do as a parent.
In my understanding, and I want to share it with you like this. When the children are small, they don't notice you. They don't want you. They're not interested.
B to the S. If he is saying this, then he is lying to himself to justify not parenting his children when they were little. Period. No. Parents care, or kids care about both of their parents initially from when they're born. If they don't care about you, that's a learned behavior that you've taught them.
Is he fucking stupid?
Yes.
Like, my dad is super sweet. I love my dad. And he loves me, and he loves Hannah, and he's super supportive of me. And he says that my brother and I were the best things that ever happened to him in his life. And thinking about that makes me want to cry because he's just so sweet. And he told me that he used to talk to me when I was not born yet, so that I would like know what his voice sounded like and stuff. Like, babies know, they have like recognition of smells and sounds and stuff. Like, I don't know. They know when they're not being held, you know?
But Elliot has to justify why he didn't want to deal with his kids.
In you. Your job there is to support the mother, provide for the mother, care for the mother, help the mother do what she needs to do for the kids. When
you know what would help if you also parented? Buying dinner is not, I mean, it's helping in a way, but you know what would be real help? If you actually helped. Like, if you have a situation again where you are the person who goes out and works and makes money for the family, that's great. And that's what you've worked out, and presumably your spouse is doing a lot of the day-to-day childcare. But when you're home, you are a parent. When you're gone, you're a parent. You don't get to check out just because you also work. You don't. Oops, it muted.
Nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Elliot is so gross, and I feel so bad not only for his children, but his spouse. I think his spouse is pretty bad, too.
Younger, I was always present, but almost like God the Father, not actively, intensely, intimately present, but always there. Mainly.
Again, the ego on Tate, or not Tate, again, sorry. The ego on Elliot, where he's like, I was there, but not present. Like God. I am God to this family. Can you imagine how insufferable this guy must be to be around? I feel bad for his kids. I do. Because I had a father who, like, thinks about himself like this. He thinks he's God's gift to the world, and that him just, like, doing the bare minimum and going to work and making sure the family didn't starve, he thinks that makes him, like, worthy of praise. And it's so ridiculous. And I don't talk to that dude anymore. For very good reasons. He's an awful man. I shouldn't gender that. He's an awful person, but I would say he's also an awful man. He's just a bad guy, and he reminds me a lot of Elliot. And I have a feeling at least a few of his kids, I don't know how many kids he has, at some point I hope they realize how their dad is, and they're able to also decide, like, Yeah, cutting these ties would not be the worst thing to ever happen.
So that hierarchy works. I help Eve, Eve helps the children. I help Colleen, Colleen helps the children.
Dr. Gamble with 100 bits. He was always there. And then there's a link I'll click in a second. The Stellar Sea Cow. My mother, when she was in her cult, tried to get my stepfather to be like this, and he wouldn't, and it would lead to them arguing. Yikes.
There's nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
I can't play this. Movie clip. Can't play movie clips, guys. I'm putting this stuff on YouTube. I always do. And I recognize that video is on YouTube, but I want to monetize these videos, and I can't if I play movie clips in them.
Children don't notice what's going on up above mommy. Mommy knows what's going on above mommy because mommy is cared for.
Having such a boner over hierarchies that you turn your family into one is disgusting. Jesus Christ. You're a family. You're not a corporation. Stop acting like you're the CEO and your wife is human resources and your baby's the employee. No. You are parents and that is a child. Period.
Loved, provided for by daddy. Now there comes a particular point in the child's life where just providing food, sustenance, roof over the head, emotional support is not going to be enough. Right? And you got to be able to...
Day one. Day one is the day that stops being enough. When I should probably even go back further. Being supportive while your wife is pregnant is also a thing. But bare minimum, I'll say, when you want to parent, you need to do it from day one.
Discern when that is the particular, when that's a particular case. Being present is key, but then once the kids become a particular age, you're going to need to step in and be the boundary setter, be the disciplinarian, be the one that decides yes or no, you get to go or you don't.
How about you both decide that, because you and your wife are partners and you need to make decisions collectively for the good of your child. What a weird way to have a daddy fetish, says 74 Quinn. He called Trump daddy the other day. We watched that video, so... not exactly shocking.
The reason being is that the mother has a softer heart towards the children, and mommies don't want to see their children suffer. Daddies understand that life is about suffering. So daddy...
Where do I begin with this one? This is a whole box. This isn't even a can of worms. This is a box of cases of cans of worms. Life involves suffering. Yes, I agree. We're all going to face hardships in our lives that are going to be difficult tests of our ability to get through things. That doesn't mean life literally is suffering. And if you feel that it is, then you probably need to get checked out by a psychiatric professional. And if this is the worldview that you're conveying to your children, then you're a bad parent.
Daddies need to be the one, unless you grew up without a daddy and you grew up in the mommified world where mommy rules and men have never suffered, so they behave like an extra mommy in the home. If you have been raised by a strong father, know what the power of strong boundaries in a masculine way is, you'll be there to say, no, I don't care if you cry. I don't care if you hate me. I don't care if you throw a temper tantrum. I don't care if you threaten to run away. The answer is no. It's harder for moms to do that.
You understand that, okay, first of all, the whole gendering of this is stupid. It implies that every single woman and every single man behaves a certain way and feels a certain way, and it just isn't the case. But also, the idea that you think you get a pass on having compassion for your children and your feelings because you're a man is exactly the kind of thing that makes people not want to deal with their dads. Like, this is daddy issues personified, the guy. Like, if you're wondering, if Elia ever wonders, boy, why do my kids have daddy issues? This is why. Like, it's one thing to set boundaries for your children, and that's something that you're going to have to do as a parent. I understand that. But to then not be able to address their feelings in any way outside of, like, tough tough titty, kid. You just deal with it. Those are the boundaries. That's a problem. That's a problem, and it's going to create issues between you and those kids. You need to be able to have discussions with them reasonably, and I understand that kids aren't reasonable. But that's why you need to be the reasonable person in the room and teach them how to be reasonable. So let's say your kid wants to go do something that isn't reasonable. I don't know. They want to do something that isn't safe or whatever. Fill in the blank with whatever you think it might be. And you tell them no. And they cry and they pout and they whatever. You should be able to say to them, hey, I'm sorry you feel that way, but you need to understand that this is for your own good. Here's why. X, Y, Z. Let's say it's unsafe or it's something that will be bad for you, and you explain that. And they still might not get it. And you can say to them, I understand you're upset with me right now, and that's okay. And you're valid to have those feelings, but nonetheless, those are the boundaries. Whatever. And it seems to me that Elliot's take on this is to go, yeah, cry, kid. Go up to your room. Screw you. And that's a really unhealthy way. Like, boundaries don't have to be adversarial. You don't have to be the bad guy to set boundaries. You just have to be a parent. Like, you can explain your reasons, and the kid probably still won't be happy about it, but you don't have to turn it into a dick measuring competition with your own child. It's very bizarre. You're a woman, so clearly you know nothing about suffering. True.
The dad needs to be the one that has sort of a cold, stoic, strong position on things. Otherwise, it's going to be chaos like there is in much of the world right now during this diabolical disorientation.
What?
And then finally, recognize that there's going to be different requirements with regard to your teenage boy versus your teenage girl. Highly recommend that you guys read the book Iron John, where he talks about at a particular point, our ancestors understood that little boys needed to be stripped away from their mothers so that the mother doesn't destroy them with her stifling love.
Oh my god. Again, the implication that all mothers are inherently overbearing and going to destroy male youths with love is so absurd. No. Do I even need to say no to that? Shouldn't we all instinctively just go, what? No, what are you talking about? You think this is Sparta, where we need these kids to basically develop PTSD as a defense mechanism against fighting, like, people with spears? No. Stop it.
A lot of boys are destroyed because their mommies are way too involved in their lives past a particular age. When testosterone starts bubbling up in a boy's body, he needs to move away from his mommy. And that has always been the job of the fathers, to say, okay, mommy can't save you now, right? By introducing the boys to challenge, austerity, and then meaning in terms of what is pertinent and
I am so scared for his children.
Important and resourceful for a man in the society. We call this rites of passage and initiation. Doesn't really exist very much anymore today, but men need to be aware of it so when that time arises, you can save the boy from his mommy. Not that the mommy wants to do anything, but there's toxic masculinity, there's toxic femininity. There's a dark side to the mother, and she wants to stifle the boy. It's just a part of her nature.
Nothing funny about the
and then finally,
Dr. Gamble says, this guy is just, yeah, I know.
With regard to little girls, you gotta hold those boundaries strong and know how to say no, even though they wanna cut your throat. Little girls, just like women, wanna manipulate. They like to control strong men. And they're gonna shit test their daddy just like they're gonna shit test other men. They're gonna see, how far can I push the boundary with my cuteness? How far can I push the boundary with batting my little eyes and telling you how much I love you? It doesn't matter. A strong father has to be able to say, no, you can't wear that. No, you can't go there. No, you can't be with him.
Of course it has to do, and his examples are having to do with policing his own daughter's body. Lovely.
In a world where daddy has been particularly weak and the children
his daughters are gonna have a really bad time. I really like, as much as I might dislike Elliot, my concern for his children outweighs my hate for him. Like, these kids are not gonna turn out okay. They just aren't.
And women tend to rule. So little girls, boy, they're gonna be tough. Because we live in a world with movies like Cutie, where they teach little girls it's okay to twerk.
That's literally the opposite of the message of that movie. My God. The right-wingers' obsession with the movie's cuties has been hilarious. Like, I totally get it. That movie is problematic. The fact that they use underage girls and their bodies to get the message across that the underage sexualization of girls is wrong is problematic at best. They should have gotten body doubles and had adults do any of the stuff that were, like, showing, like, look how gross this is that you're sexualizing young women. I totes get that. But the right taking it as though the movie is, like, pro-pedophilia is so weird, and they so clearly read nothing about the movie. Like, I get it. I totes get it. Netflix's ads for it were gross. I understand. But, like, to completely misrepresent the movie and say the movie is pro-twerking is so elucidating to how little these people are actually tuned into reality.
You gotta be able to say no. So that's it, dude. Long answer. I wanted to kind of spell out a lot of things here for you because I think this is an important topic for men and women to consider. I hope that helps you, dude. Talk soon. Done.
God, Elliot's the worst kind of person, and I really hope his kids turn out okay, but I'm not, I don't have high hopes. Anyway, how long have we been going?
There's
4 hours.
nothing funny about the tools of capitalism.
Okay, you can disagree with me. That's fine. I haven't seen the movie. I admitted that I think that the entire purpose is undercut by the way in which they do it. I already admitted that. I'm saying that the intent was not to do that, and that is not the intent of the movie. We can talk about success or failure, but that would involve me watching the movie, and I'm not going to do that. Stellar Sea Cow with 5 bits. Yeah. I have a long rant about why twerking being sexual is racist, but that's because I've spent enough time doing traditional Wolof dancing to see what twerking is derived from. Alright. I'm not going to have that conversation because I don't know anything about it. Is there anyone I might want to raid? Maybe we'll just call it a night. I don't know. Anyway, I know Liv posting is live, but I've raided her a lot recently, and I don't want to be weird. I always feel like it's weird if I raid the same person over and over and over. Riley Grace Roshong, I don't know who that is. Hold on. Riley, what does she do?
Are they morally culpable for those deaths?
Is there a rule that says that people should not bring pool water into the sauna?
Yes.
Where is that visible, or where is that posted? Where is it?
Right next to the sauna.
Okay, then yeah, I would probably hold that person to be morally culpable.
Okay. And they're not morally culpable then in this case because they assumed risk to other people though, right?
Wait, they're not morally culpable? I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I'm gonna make too many claims. I'm just gonna like ask questions and explore your ideas.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, it
Trans
seems like in
law
this scenario,
student that covers
they didn't
politics.
assume a risk to other people when they did that. I don't even
Getting
think
an
they
ad
really
for joining the
understood risk
Navy.
fully,
Yeah, I can't
but they
even
engaged
join
in
the
an
armed
activity that was
services.
disallowed, whether they understood why or not.
I'm
And in the
literally
process, they
legally
hurt
not
other people.
allowed.
And you're saying that this person
So
shouldn't
go
be
ahead and start
culpable,
World War
though the
III
rule
if you
does
got, well,
seem to be
everyone would
aimed at
die.
preventing
Start
harm
some
to
stupid
yourself and
conflict.
others.
Go ahead, I
thought
can't
I
get
said
sent. I
that
don't
they
care.
would be.
I
He
do
is
care.
culpable?
Don't do that.
Oh, okay. So
Kidding.
he's culpable, but he didn't know the purpose of that rule either,
Fine,
right?
we'll do it right. Okay.
I mean, I think that it should be...
Because if he knew the purpose, assumably, and this is why I tried to prep like a really good analogy.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely fair. Okay, like I think that's So we're focusing on whether the law.
So enjoy the stream, everyone. I'll be back tomorrow to do other stuff. Don't know what.
Yeah.
So have a good night, everyone. Chat's
if I
valid.
give my
See
personal
you guys next time.
perspective in here, if I can just jump in and be
Yeah, go
Noah
for
for
it.
like 2 seconds. I personally, I just don't think we